You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun camp. You will help them accomplish wonders.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another commentary here on the Arctic Ninja Network. I am Paul Shirey, Arctic Ninja Paul, and we have a super awesome guest today. I can't tell you truly how excited I am to have him. We have Sean O'Connell with us today, who is, he's a great guy. He's a film reporter, he is a commentator, and he is probably the most well-known, I would say, film blogger champion of the Snyder Cut. And, you know, I've met Sean. We've been on set visits together. We've been everywhere. And it's always every time I would see him, it would make me so happy. So, Sean, thank you for joining us today. How you doing?
This is awesome, Paul. Thank you for having me on as well, too. It's fun because, you know, people don't really realize that the film journalist community really is a tight-knit group. We spend a lot of time together in really strange places. And you're exactly right. Whenever you land on a set visit and you start to see some familiar faces, people you know who you're going to not mind spending the entire day with.
Yeah.
You sort of gravitate to that pocket and then you're like, all right, cool, we're gonna hang out all day. And you and I did it recently on the Army of the Dead set. And
yes.
We've had a really good time on some really fun adventures. And I can't think of anyone else that I'd want to sit down and watch Man of Steel with.
Oh, that's
it's definitely
awesome.
Something I was planning to do heading into Justice League when it comes to HBO Max. I'm gonna have to do BVS Ultimate Edition as well too, but this is perfect. Let's dive into this outstanding feature.
That makes me so happy. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like every time, like you show up at a set visit, you show up at a junket, you look for those faces. You're like, oh my God, please let some cool people be here. And I remember, so we can't talk about it, and we're not going to, but we were on the set of Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, and I remember seeing seeing Sean in the lobby. And I just walked right up to him and I just kind of whispered in his ear, release the Snyder Cut. And I just loved seeing his face when I did that. And I knew how excited he was to be on that set, and just what a crazy, awesome supporter he is for Zack Snyder and his work. So just real quick, Sean, before we get started, you wrote a book about the upcoming Zack Snyder's Justice League, which comes out on March 18th on HBO Max, in case you didn't know. And you wrote a book about it. Just tell us a little bit about the book, where people can get it before we dive into the very first DC Universe movie.
Absolutely. The book is called Release the Snyder Cut because, you know, that became the phrase that was synonymous with these people who were fighting for 3 years to get Warner Brothers to change their mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, as someone who reported on film as many years as you did, you knew how fascinating, just from a technical standpoint and an industry standpoint, when Zack Snyder had to walk away from Justice League back in 2017, like it was a bombshell, you know, like no blockbusters try not to switch directors midstream. It's a disaster creatively.
Yes.
And, you know, the reasons that Zack had to leave were tragic. And then when he got replaced by, you know, at the time, the main competitor, the guy who had directed 2 Avengers movies for Marvel, which is what DC was chasing.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Like I found that to be, as a storyteller, as a journalist, I found that to be fascinating. And then the movie being as bad as it was intriguing, and what went wrong, how all the things that they let go wrong on that movie. And then, following the progress of this movement for 3 years. And I was aware of them, as I'm sure you were too. They dominated social media. But it wasn't until like late 2019, mid to late 2019, when they were starting to take over San Diego during Comic-Con, or they rented a digital billboard in the middle of Times Square, during New York Comic-Con, that I was like, I got to find out who these people are. Like, I want to figure out who they are. How are they able to stay motivated for 3 years? Like, fandom, as you know, they're constantly attacking each other and dividing, and to see this group, or the majority of this group, stay together and keep their eye on the prize, and literally convince a studio to change their mind and release a version of a movie that they weren't going to release, blows me away. And as I got to know the people in the movement and tried to get them to let me tell their story, I found some really deeply emotional connections that these people had to this material and to Zack's interpretation of these characters. And it really ended up becoming the book. To me, it captures really this weird snapshot of this 3-year journey to get Justice League released, but it also captures the idea of fandom and how passionate people can get about certain material. And it might, for you, it might be the DC movies. For some people, it's definitely Star Wars. For other people, it's Harry Potter. Like, whatever it is, you love something. And if you were eagerly anticipating a film like these people were, the live action Justice League movie, and then it got butchered, you'd want to know why. And so I hope that this book tells the story.
That's so cool, man. Like, and honestly, congratulations on doing that. It's no small feat to write a book. And it's just amazing. So where can people get the book, Sean, if they want to read it right now? Like, where can they get it?
Anywhere books are sold. It's essentially in, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. It's on Amazon. It dropped on March 1st. These past few days have been crazy to see people from literally all over the world sending me pictures of themselves holding it.
I'm going to send you a picture as well. I'm going this weekend, and I'm going to go to my Barnes & Noble here in Alaska and get my copy. I didn't want to order it. I wanted to go to the bookstore and like actually get it, because that to me is like the coolest part. It's like, holy shit,
wow. Look
at that. There it is.
Thank you for that. But what it speaks to is how global Zack's fan base is. And honestly, I guess I should have been aware of that. I didn't realize how passionate, you know this about him, Paul. Like, his fans are rabid. And I kind of made this analogy, when that movie got butchered, it was because Warner Brothers decided that they were trying to shift away from the darker and serious, that started with Man of Steel,
right,
and get more closer to Marvel, obviously, with the more family-friendly or audience-friendly Marvel tone. And whatever movie was in that crosshair was going to get destroyed. And it could have been Wonder Woman, or it could have been Shazam. It just so happened to be Justice League that was in the pipeline. And I've learned over the course of this time that if it were one of those other movies, like, God bless Patty Jenkins and God bless, David Sandberg, but they do not have the same fan base. There would not be a clamor, for the Jenkins cut the way that this fan base has rallied around Snyder. And it's so all of this has taught me just how powerful he is as a filmmaker and how passionate his fan base is.
Absolutely. And the thing I'll just end on from my own perspective, when we were on the set of Army of the Dead, actually speaking to Zack, for me, that was what changed my whole perspective on the Snyder Cut, because up until that point, nobody had heard anything from Zack about what his feelings were on the fan movement or anything. And I think, I'm not going to go into specifics of what he said, but it was something to me that just changed my entire perspective for Zack. And that's what really ushered me towards the movement. I was just a Zack Snyder fan. I love Zack Snyder. I love his films, his style, everything. I didn't think we'd see the Snyder Cut for another 20 years, to be quite honest, if we ever did. But talking to Zack and then kind of following down that rabbit hole, that's what changed it all for me. So I think it's great that you have this book out. People, if you want to know more about the Snyder Cut, you can hear it straight from Sean in the Release the Snyder Cut book, which is out at Barnes & Noble. You can get it online. You can get it on Kindle as well, right? You can get a Kindle. Yep. You can get it anyway. So
available on Kindle.
Check it out.
And we're going to have an audiobook. An audiobook version is coming soon, too. It's in production right now. And we got
nice.
George Newbern does the voice of Superman in a lot of the animated DC stuff, and he's reading it for me.
Oh,
so
that's
I'm
amazing.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
All
All right. Well, Unfortunately, we're not here to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League just yet. Who knows what could happen in the future? We're going back to where it all started, and that is Man of Steel, the 2013 Zack Snyder film that kicked all of this off, that started the DCEU, or whatever you want to call it, and is the, I guess for all intents and purposes, the Iron Man of the DC universe at this point. So basically it has started it all, starring Henry Cavill, directed by Zack Snyder, and this is my all-time favorite Superman movie. It's also Sean's, and we're going to watch the movie now. So kick back, grab a drink, whatever you want. I'm having a little drink, and it's late afternoon for me. Probably shouldn't be drinking, but I'm doing it anyways. It's just the way it's going to be. So anyways, follow along with us. I'll give you a little countdown. Sean and I will start the movie at that time, and there'll also be a counter on the screen so you can keep up in case you got to take a bathroom break and come back to it. You'll be all good. So here we go. Sean, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, so I'm going to give us a countdown here. I'm going to get my screen queued up. And 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so it is now underway. Warner Brothers logo coming on screen, and the Zack Snyder, I guess it's like the Zack Snyder like Krypton kind of design, which I always thought was super cool.
So you called this the Iron Man. I think it's more the Batman Begins, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, in that sense. And interestingly enough, they did bring Christopher Nolan on to basically help steer this in the beginning. And then after they basically got the script together, Nolan was like, it's Snyder's movie. And that's the way, I'm glad it went that way. There's Nolan's logo, the Syncope logo.
Mm-hmm.
Which every time I see it, I just think of Inception because that's what it's based on.
All right, so Snyder, we can tell from his films, he opens his movies with either births or deaths, primarily.
Yeah. Here we have Ayelet Zurer. Some of you may remember her from the Daredevil show on Netflix. She played Vanessa, Kingpin's wife. And she's awesome. I love her. She's so good. Originally, I believe there was somebody else that was cast. It was Olivia Ormond.
Oh, is that true?
That was cast initially that she had to drop out. Or not Olivia, Julia Ormond. I said Olivia.
Oh,
Julia Ormond was originally cast and she had to drop out, so they got Ayelet Zurer to take over. And here we have the birth.
I love the Kryptonian tech. Kryptonian tech is fascinating. It looks so fluid.
Yeah.
There's elements of, they just dropped this. I mean, this is, so here's your first indication that we're not seeing a Superman movie like we've ever seen before, right? Yeah.
We're like in Star Wars land here. And every time I see this, I'm like, dude, this looks amazing. Like to this day, everything, the effects, everything look just awesome. This feels like a new world we're in. I don't feel like I'm on a set. I don't feel like any of that. I'm just like, dude, awesome.
I have to be so honest with you, though. Okay, so my first gut reaction to this was really jarring because I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting to get immersed in this level of science fiction in a Superman movie. It's a bold swing. It's a really bold swing, and it took me a couple of watches to really get on board with, because I'm watching these scenes play out, and they are in a certain way mirroring the Donner story, right? Like where you get early Krypton and you get Zod and you get, the rebellion kind of thing, and Superman having to be sent away, Kal-El having to be sent away. And I was like, oh, weird. He's kind of doing the Donner, but it's like amplified, to the nth degree.
And it's given it's a distinctness that we haven't seen. There's no like foil suits and like weird, kind of crystal-like, technology going on. There's a form and function to this world that we didn't really see in the Donner version, because you're just kind of like, you're like, oh, wow, it's cool. And so everything's like crystal-like, which was cool at the time, but you can't do that again.
Right.
So obviously we have Russell Crowe here. You have Michael Shannon as Zod, and, two great, powerful actors, perfectly cast. I mean, Michael Shannon is just a ferocious powerhouse in this movie as Zod, and very different from the Zod we had in Superman 2 in Donner's version,
Right.
Or Lester's version, whichever way you want to call it. But I just love Michael Shannon in this role. He's just so amazing. And
So
Russell
much more
Crowe,
militaristic, right? So much more
yeah.
militaristic.
Yeah, very much so. Very like hardline in that sense. And I think, I don't know if it was Zack that had said it or not, but he's a far more complex villain than I think he gets a lot of credit for, in that he is really trying to, keep the survival of his species, of his race, right? And it's actually you could make the case that Zod is right. You know what I'm saying? He's brutal.
Oh, sure.
And he's vicious, but in the end, he's trying to save the Kryptonian race. And we'll get more into that later as we get into the film. You'll see, shades of that come back again and again.
I like that they kind of let Russell Crowe be a badass too.
Yeah, totally. Like, and that's, something you want to
man,
see, right? You want to see like, hey, this is Superman's dad. Like, he should be a badass.
Yeah.
Did you watch Krypton, Sean, the show?
I did not. No.
It was like supposedly took place 200 years before all this. I never watched it. I kind of just didn't really want to go down that path, because you kind of know where it all ends anyways.
Sure. I haven't started watching the Lois and Superman show that just started, which is also supposed to be pretty good.
I keep hearing good things, but
episodes.
I have not been able to check it out yet. Too busy. But look at these effects, man. Like, these hold up beautifully today. Like, this still just feels like a massive world. It reminds me a lot of a Ridley Scott film in that sense, where everything is so refined that this is something that could, truly stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Nothing
definitely.
feels dated. I'm not like, oh man, what is this?
Right. This shot is unbelievable.
And
Just
the whole thing with like the codex and all of this stuff. I remember seeing it in theaters and I was like, wow. Like, I think I very much like you, I was ill prepared for the level of like scientific like involvement that went into this. Like, it's just, and I think that's also one of the common complaints that you have with Man of Steel is like, it's not, rescue kittens from a tree enough. And that's true. It's not, but with good reason. It's a very, more grounded take that I think is, but also big on the sci-fi. Like, they really go big, which I love.
It's interesting that Zack often gets the criticism that he doesn't understand the characters, when I think the exact opposite is true. He's one of the few filmmakers approaching them who has stopped long enough to think about the long-term consequences about who they are, so that when you think about Superman as an alien coming to our planet, he would of course have a rich science fiction alien background that would include all of these elements. And other filmmakers, they would be like, let's get to Kansas. Let's quick get to an element of the world that I can relate to on a human level. Whereas Zack is like, no, we got to do all of this in order to set up who he is.
And I feel like, someone like Zack, I feel like, he falls asleep at night thinking about these characters. I feel like, in terms of like who they are, what their motivations are, what they think, what they feel, what they want, what they don't want. I've always felt that way with his characters. I felt like this is, Zack has given a lot of thought to these characters. So I totally agree with you that he has made, a bigger investment than he's ever given credit for into these characters. Now, whether you like that or not, that's another story.
Sure.
I do, but some people disagree with that, with certain choices. But in the end, they are Zack's choices, and they do work very well. And David Goyer's choices as well. And
to that end, though, isn't that every comic series? Like, you go multiple issues, and then you switch creators. Someone gets a good run, and you may really dial into it, but then the next person takes over, and they're the same characters that you love, but all of a sudden you're like, wait, we're doing something different with these people.
Yeah.
What's happening?
I mean,
I
that's
think everyone
absolutely
should be able to get
right.
that chance.
You're absolutely right. And that is a very true thing with comics. And, speaking of that too, this Man of Steel borrows from a lot of different comics, heavily from Birthright, which was written by Mark Waid and drawn by Lionel Francis Yu, amazing artist, amazing writer. And it borrows a lot of those different things. But, you know, in that time since Birthright was published, Superman's gone through all kinds of different changes, incarnations, and all kinds of different stuff. So, you know, there is a kind of handover of these characters, and, you know, you invest or you don't invest in certain incarnations. I'm the same way. I'm like, you know, I've read comics for over 30 years and continue to do so. I still go to the comic shop weekly, and you know, there's books I quit and books I start up again, and some I never come back to for that very reason that you said. You know, like, I'm just like, what are they even doing? Like, I'm done.
It's exactly why the streaming services, the Marvel Unlimited and the DC Universe or DC Infinite, what is it called now? I find them to be fantastic.
Yeah.
As resources, because of the ability to just skip around and try out books. You know, you're not blowing a fortune and trying to store books, you know, that the run goes dry and you don't really love the way that it went. Or, you know, I'll get a hankering for a character and then just go on a run with them for a couple of weeks, you know, and
just do a deep dive
storyline. So, yep.
So obviously a very different, you know, style of pod than what we're used to. I always think of like the giant, like, seed with the spikes on it that's shooting through the air, the starways, and it's a very different thing here. And this whole, like, encoding the codex into Kal-El is, again, nothing I expected. You know, I think it's amazing. It's awesome that they, like, invested so much into it. And I think that's where people watch this initially and they're just like, what is going on with this? But they just weren't ready. You know, they just weren't ready to accept it. And I think multiple watches will teach you, or show you rather, the payoff of all of that.
Dude, I'm telling you, it took me a few watches to get on board with.
Because you see, that's how I was with BVS. It took me, I would say, about 10 watches for Batman v Superman, and definitely seeing the Ultimate Cut to finally resolve so many things and just be like, this is actually brilliant. This is not just good. This is actually a brilliant movie. But it took me a while to get there. I didn't feel that way walking out of the theater the first time I saw it.
Okay. Well, first time you saw it, you saw the theatrical cut, which again is an argument against, you know, everything that happened with Zack and him having to sort of step away from the DCEU because Warner Brothers didn't love the direction that it was going underneath him, and they believed that mainstream audiences were not 100% behind what he was doing.
Yeah.
But then they also shortchanged him with Batman vs Superman by not releasing the better version of that film into theaters.
There's, and I said that I actually reviewed it when for Joe Blow years ago, and that was one of the key things I said was that there's plot points explained in the Ultimate Cut of BVS that make complete sense out of things that were complete nonsense in the theatrical cut. They literally released a theatrical cut that took parts out that made it impossible to completely comprehend in terms of motives and characters. You're like, huh? What? And then you watch the Ultimate Cut and it's a big,
That's a huge reason why I never closed my mind off to the idea of a Snyder Cut of Justice League. Like, when other colleagues of ours would come out and say, like, there's no way it exists, or even if it exists, it's bad. And my logic behind that was always, he had an extended cut of BVS that was better. How would he not have another cut of Justice League? And this is back when we kind of thought theatrical was an extension of what his initial vision was going to be, before we learned how much had been reshot. And I was like, because I'm 100% with you, when I watch Ultimate Edition, things with Amy Adams and Lois Lane, things with Scoot McNairy, like a lot of stuff with Lex, it all just gets filled in. And you're like, I get the bigger picture here now. So why wouldn't you want to see the bigger picture on whatever his ultimate vision for Justice League is? And now you're getting, Paul, it's 4 hours.
4 hours. It's insane.
It's a feast. It's a feast.
It is, nothing like it ever before. So something to note here that I read when I was doing a little bit of research to prepare for this was, which I didn't know until just recently, is, so, you know, they have the suits underneath, and you have like Superman's suit on Earth, which is basically like an undersuit. It's like it's like a base layer. It really is like pajamas, in that sense. And you see that here with the Kryptonian armor, just like you saw Russell Crowe, you saw him gear up, you saw Jor-El gear up with the armor that goes over that suit. That suit is kind of like the chainmail that a knight would wear, where they put the armor on top. So that the whole thing of having, Kal-El on Earth with that suit, we see it as very powerful and cool and all that other stuff. But on Krypton, if he was wearing that, he would be completely vulnerable without the armor.
That's interesting.
So because on Krypton, he would be the same as everybody else, right? Right, yes. I think it's an interesting thing. And then you see, when we get to the end, you see Jor-El strip his armor off when he kind of comes to that realization that, hey, I'm actually a god here. I don't need this armor. I don't need it.
Right.
I'm wearing, it's like actually weighing me down. Whereas on Krypton, if Kal-El were here, like at this moment and fully grown, he would need that armor. He couldn't just take a punch from Zod or anybody and just be like, oh, that was nothing. He would, could bleed, could be hurt.
Right. Can you imagine the uproar amongst fans if they put Superman in armor?
I would love to see it if they did it in like a Kingdom Come kind of way, like show him in, like the armor that they had for that, just temporary. That would be cool. But yeah, there would be uproar. There's always uproar.
People scream at yeah, of course, but they scream at like the color palette, like his color palette isn't vivid enough. If Zack put him in armor, that'd be the end.
There's always something. There's one thing you can always count on is for outrage. Always. It's the one constant. It will always be there for you. So in the background, you could see Antje Traue, who plays Feora. Interesting bit is that Gal Gadot was actually hired to play Feora originally, but she had to drop out due to being pregnant. And then later was hired to play Wonder Woman. So we almost had a Gal Gadot Feora, but it ended up working out in her favor. And sadly, we haven't seen Antje Traue anywhere. I don't know what she's up to these days. It's a shame, though, because I absolutely love her in this movie. She's so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that shot looks like his Army of the Dead shot with the helicopters now from the trailer. See, and this again, like we saw this, the Judgment of Zod, the banishment, I feel like that's part of his mythology, on screen at least. Is that a big element of him in the comics? Do we see this repeatedly on screen because this is an element of him in the comics? Because I'm not familiar enough.
Yes. So Zod he's always been this kind of like militant, force for Krypton, but he's malevolent in the ways that he will get what he wants. So he's always been that way about that preservation. And over time, developed a hatred for Kal-El, especially putting him in the Phantom Zone. Which, I feel like Zod's always breaking out of the Phantom Zone. There's a great story if you're looking for a cool Superman comic. There's the Jim Lee for Tomorrow version, which is great, and that has Zod in it, which is always it's always great to see him show up, especially with Jim Lee drawing him. And it's a great story, and it's a great kind of, I guess, ease into Zod from the comics. And the art's very easy on the eyes.
Oh my God, Jim Lee's a wizard.
He's amazing. I just got his. I don't know if you saw. I shared on Twitter, but I got his artist edition for X-Men. Just came in the mail. I pre-ordered it a year ago. Nice. Oh my God! Like just opening that first page, and I was just like, my eyes are just like, wow. I may even do a video on that just because it's so amazing. I want to share it with everybody.
That's awesome.
So here's a very different Phantom Zone. Now, the way it's explained, and I'm not a total expert on everything Superman, but that the Phantom Zone is not a device as much as it is like a living thing. So the Phantom Zone is actually like it's living, almost like Venom, I guess, kind of like that, like a symbiote kind of thing.
Like a symbiote?
Something along those lines. But that's the way it's described, is that it's like an actually living creature that holds people in.
So not the square that's just flipping over and over.
Yeah, not the mirror like floating in space.
In the Donner. But come on, that's an iconic visual.
It really is. I mean, totally. And speaking of iconic, I mean, I love this whole sequence here of her just watching her world end.
Yeah.
You know, I found it affecting. You know, watching it now, I find it affecting. I just think it's an amazing sequence. You know, and it gives more heart and vulnerability to Kal-El's parents. It gives him more origin when you see him later. You know, this is his mother. You know, you think back on this. You know, you've met his mother and father on Krypton. You meet his mother and father on Earth. Like, just a lot of investment that goes into who he is and where he comes from.
We're 20 minutes into this movie, and we're still on Krypton. I think that's a pretty bold.
And we still haven't seen Henry Cavill in any capacity. It's amazing. And it's amazing that you don't really feel it. I don't feel it. I know it's coming, though, so I've seen it before. But you're still like, wow.
Sure.
Like,
and in any other interpretation, right, you'd have studio heads, and maybe he heard it from them of just like, where's Superman? I'm paying for Superman, you know?
I mean, I feel like if I were Zack Snyder, I would just dread notes every time they came to me. I'd just be like, oh my God, what now? He's probably like, he probably laughs about it knowing Zack, you know, he's probably got a good sense of humor about it at this point.
Well,
but he's probably
I think honestly,
all the notes.
I think on this one in particular, Nolan really protected him. I think Nolan believed in his vision, and Nolan had a ton of the Dark Knight cred. So the studio is willing to give him a shot. Okay, I want to talk about this because I find this to be incredibly jarring now too, and a decision that I had to really come to terms with because I think it's brilliant now. But we just zip right past Kansas. You know, like we're not Baby Clark and we're not Kansas the anymore. Kents, and it's no, you go right to a grown Superman.
Yep.
And I can remember watching this for the first time and being like, is there a reel missing? Like, it's a choice, right? It's a choice.
Yeah.
That you're going to catch up with a grown Superman who's been messing with his or dealing with his issues, and it throws me for a loop because I was like, where are we now? How did we? What we were just on Krypton for 20 minutes. Now we're here.
I think it's a brilliant choice, but I absolutely get that sentiment. Again, it's like I said early on. It's like, we came into this movie, we're like, oh, a new Superman movie. And you have all these built-in expectations from growing up with the Reeve and Donner films. And you're like, well, wait, what? And here we are. This is, I love this is amazing. So Cavill trained with Jim Jones, Mark Twight, who runs Jim Jones. The same place that trained the boys from 300 when Zack was making that. Zack also has trained there. And there's a couple topless scenes for Henry Cavill, and he trained ridiculously hard for these scenes. He refused to use steroids. He refused to do anything to fake it. He wanted it to be like natural, like I am Superman, and he wanted to show like what that could be. He really took a lot of heart and integrity into not only just having the role, but embodying the physical elements of this. And he looks, you know, obviously amazing. And trained with Russell Crowe at the same time at Jim Jones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they trained together during that time.
You talk about the visual effects holding up. Like these visual effects are still better than what some films are putting out now.
They're great. Zack has, you know, again, like he is a visionary filmmaker. Like he truly understands the language of film and how to apply it. And it speaks for itself, you know, whether you care for his storytelling or whatever the case may be, he understands the visual medium of film. And I love these little flashback sequences. So here we have, you know, young Clark just hanging out at school, and all of a sudden you like can see the bones and flesh of his teacher's face. You know, these are things you never saw in a Christopher Reeve movie. You know, it was all very, you know, kind of like, you know, warm, glossed over. This is like, to me, it's like meat and bones. You're really getting into it.
And again, perfect visual representation of what his powers probably are at that stage. Just overwhelming.
And something that ties together later, because this is a world that basically he wasn't born into, but has been there since an infant, right? So,
Yeah.
Later on in the film when he's, fighting Zod and his minions, and he's perfected, right? Like how to assimilate into this environment, and they haven't. So, again, I think this shows kind of the care and the screenwriting, and that they developed a story that makes sense and pays off later on. They planted these seeds early.
That's a terrific line when he's saying to Zod, almost a little bit taunting him, like, I've mastered how to be here. You're overwhelmed by your senses, kind of thing.
And he's like, it hurts.
Of course, it doesn't take Zod too long.
Love it.
Doesn't take Zod too long to adjust.
Yeah, Zod's he's good at adapting, that's for sure.
We have to point out the fact that Diane Lane and Amy Adams are only separated in age by about 4 or 5 years.
I think it's actually 9 years, but that's still nothing.
Oh, is it 9? Okay.
Yeah. And I believe Cavill is 9 years younger than Amy Adams. So
oh, really?
You have like these weird gaps, but you never feel it. And Diane Lane plays it perfectly. In truth, Diane Lane could probably almost pull off Lois Lane. So here we have
that's kind of my point. Like, yeah. I want when the two of them hang out, like, why does Diane Lane say to Amy Adams, like, how come I have to be Ma Kent? Look at me.
Like, I could still do Lois. Calm down. So the scene we just saw with the whales, there was always some speculation, and I don't know if it was ever paid off. Maybe that had some kind of Aquaman connection. Like Aquaman was somehow connecting, but I don't see it. I don't see how that ties together. Just because Aquaman doesn't really enter the picture until the Justice League timeframe, and at this point, presumably, he's out in the ocean just kind of messing around. He's not really doing anything mission-wise, like Correct. Saving the world.
Right. Yeah. I thought that was a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, definitely. They're like, whales, Aquaman. Well, yes, but no. I was always jarred by this, by the music, like hearing like a rock song in a Man of Steel movie. Kind of took me aback. I was like, oh, interesting.
That's the first time I've ever seen that cross over the school bus. I've never seen the cross on the side of that white building. There's a lot of Christian symbolism.
You can't watch Man of Steel and ignore the Christian symbolism. It's everywhere, and it is laid on thick, very much so. And yes. I think that obviously very purposeful, and with good reason. I think that Zack really tied it into something, whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. Like, you can still understand and get those connections.
This is a harrowing scene too.
Very harrowing.
The scene doesn't pull any punches. It plunges that bus directly into the water.
Like kids are about to drown.
Yeah, you don't have a minute to catch your breath before realizing what is happening in this.
And this is another, what I love about this, and it'll come back again, is that this is setting up now Clark's conundrum, right? With when do I use my powers and how do I use them? When is it okay? Because as we'll see with Pa Kent, he's like, the world's not ready for you. They can't know. Like, he's kind of drilled this into his head out of the love of a father for his child, to protect his child, because he knows what that means. Yet at the same time, you have to look at from Clark's perspective, where he's like, but I have these powers. And his dad's like, but you can't use them. He's like, but I could save people. And he's like, don't do it. And we see this come back to haunt him again and again.
So are we ready to have this conversation? Because this is a controversial sticking point for me with Man of Steel.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
The line that's coming up that we'll be getting to in a minute, where he asks Pa Kent whether he should have let those kids die. And Pa Kent says, I don't know. I get it. It's gray area. But I hate that line. I hate it every time I hear it. Oh, I hate it.
Interesting.
It bothers me every time, because I think that believe me, I completely understand why it's there, and I understand that even Jonathan Kent, can be perplexed in that moment, you know. But as much as I think Zack wants to make creative choices and changes to his character, I think that there has to be a pure, true north moral compass that's at his root, and to me, it's Jonathan Kent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just would have preferred, and again, this is audience preference versus what the filmmaker is trying to do. But if young Clark says to Jonathan, "Should I have let them drown?" And Jonathan's response needs to be, "No, of course not. You should never let anyone drown if you can stop it." And the fact that he doubts that purity even for a minute by allowing the doubt of, maybe you should have let them die. Oh, I can't come to terms with that, Paul. I can't. I think Jonathan Kent needs to be the one that says to Clark, "No, of course, you should never let innocents die."
I could see that both dualities of that, and I grew up watching, obviously the Reed movies. I also watched all of Smallville. So I really like John Schneider's Pa Kent. I love Kevin Costner, though. It's funny enough, I just finished watching Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves today, earlier today. So, I love Kevin Costner. But what I think is interesting about this character is that Jonathan Kent is human. And I think that he creates, that he wants his son to have everything and to be normal. And he's trying to preserve that purely from a place of love. And he just wants to protect his son. But I think what ends up happening is the doubts that come back again and again for Kal-El on Earth kind of stem back to Jonathan Kent because, he's always told him, like, "Hey, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody." Mm-hmm. But ultimately, by the end, what we discover is that he has to embrace something beyond that he does need to be seen, that he does need to do something, because if he doesn't, that world comes crumbling down. And in a way, it's kind of like, it's not so much that Jonathan Kent told him the right way, it's that he showed him ultimately that those doubts, though they came from a good place, were never, ever going to stand the test of time. Because no matter what, somebody like Kal-El was always going to have to reveal himself.
And he has to.
Yeah. There's no way you could have powers like Superman, powers like Kal-El, and think that you could live a normal life. There's no way. You can't. It's just not possible.
Right.
Like eventually something's going to happen where you're going to address these powers that you have, and you're going to say, I can't go to a 9-to-5 job. I can't just be a reporter and not do something. And that is the conundrum that's faced between this father-son duality that I love. And then on the other side, right, you have these two fathers. You have Jonathan Kent, and then you have Jor-El, who he meets later in life when he finds that ship. And all of a sudden now he's got a father figure telling him, no, you got to go out and do stuff. You can't just sit around. You can't just live in relative obscurity. Like you're basically a god. So you have two different father figures kind of building up who he is. And in the end, Kal-El embraces who he must become, which I just don't think he ever had a choice. Again, this like fascinating that we can get that deep into a guy that wears, blue and red spandex and flies around and can do all these powers. Like there's something to be said for that. These characters that have been created to make up who he is, from his parents to his coworkers to his friends, even his enemies. It's a fascinating character.
It's why I don't get the knock on, Superman is boring. He's one note kind of thing, because he's clearly not.
No.
If you take a minute to stop and think about the complications that come with being Superman, which a lot of storytellers don't want to embrace. They'd much rather just get into the easy element of what he can do physically.
Yeah.
But no one stops to ask the consequences of, like, even going back to watching this scene for the first time, and maybe it's because we saw the two, Superman 1, Superman 2, where you want a little bit of payback, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but,
you want to be like, ha, yeah, sucker.
he's going to get him in this element. It's interesting. I was listening to one of the or watching one of the DC animated The Death of Superman on HBO Max the other night, and he confronts Doomsday in that interpretation, and he's basically talking to Doomsday and saying, like, there's so many times when I have to face down an antagonist and I'm not able to fully use the extent of my power. You know, I have to reserve myself because by definition, I'm going to destroy everybody.
Yep.
Here now, I'm looking at you, and you are one of the rare instances where I don't have to pull back at all. And if you stop and even just think of the implications of Clark having to reserve his full power all the time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that gets explored in this live action interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we'll get more into it towards the end. Obviously, you know, we'll talk about the quote unquote destruction porn aspect, but a lot of things get forgotten. And I think it's because so much care was taken in this story is they forget that Superman in the final battle of this film has never been in a battle like that before. He doesn't know the things that he should or shouldn't do. You know, it's like, it's his very first epic battle that he's never faced before. People are like, oh, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? And it's like, well, what would you do exactly? I mean, you've thought all this through and you've had your superpowers. Like, you just don't know.
All right, let's talk about this because this is another jump that's kind of jarring. Like, we see him bopping around from job to job, right? Now we flash forward to the Arctic Circle, where Lois, first off, you get Lois introduced very quickly, and I wasn't prepared for Lois to be a globe-trotting journalist. You know, I think in most of the interpretations that we've seen of her up to that point, she was pretty limited to Metropolis. And
well, she did go to Paris in Superman 2. Although I don't know if she was on.
Yes, she did.
I think she was on an assignment there. I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched Superman 2.
So here we get, you know, a much more advanced, evolved version of Lois right off the bat. But when she steps off the helicopter and sees Clark, I'm like, why is Clark there? Where are we again? You know, like, this movie does this a couple of times where it jumps around quickly, and it needs him there because he has to be able to discover the ship when she does. But that throws me for a loop.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not sure what draws him to the ship. I don't actually remember. Maybe we'll see it. I honestly don't remember what drew him to the ship. Interesting about Amy Adams, though, is that she had tried out for Lois Lane twice prior and did not get the job. She tried for Superman Returns, the Bryan Singer directed version with Brandon Routh, and did not get the role. And it's the first time we've ever had a redheaded Lois Lane.
I think she's
typically
perfect.
It's Lana Lang that has red hair and Lois has brunette hair. But yes, I agree. She is amazing.
Wait, did Kate Bosworth dye her hair black for Superman Returns? I totally forget.
I don't know if she dyed it or if she wore a wig, but she did have dark hair.
She had dark hair?
Yeah.
God, I don't remember that movie at all.
It's for the best. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. Superman throws a giant rocket into space at the end. The end. That's it. I was so disappointed in Superman Returns, and I know what Bryan Singer was trying to do. It's basically like a 2.5 hour long fan film for Richard Donner. And, you know, by the end, it's like Superman flying into Earth and picking up a giant rock that's growing Krypton and pulling it from Earth and throwing it into space and then falling to the ground. Like, no punches are thrown. There's no battle. And I was just like, what happened here?
It is. It's a real estate scheme, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's a giant, it's such a Donner movie that it doesn't add up. So,
all right,
yeah,
so
I don't know why he's
what draws
here.
him to
I feel like I missed something.
I don't know. Yeah, it jumps forward quickly. We have to assume this is the first time he's seeing this ship.
Somebody watching right now that's studied it more than us is saying, this is why, you dumb shits. But that's okay. Either way,
like, you're too busy talking over the movie.
Yeah. So the ship itself is apparently part of a bunch of ships that had been sent out, basically looking for other planets, places to inhabit, to save Kryptonians. And so this is where, Superman, Kal-El, Clark Kent, whatever you want to call him, is kind of discovering his birthright.
And there's an open creche suggesting that there was another Kryptonian that has landed here already. And Zack very deliberately talks about that open creche. I think we might see it in this
very
scene.
Deliberately does not give you an answer as to who was in there. The speculation, of course, is that it's the now cast Sasha Calle as Supergirl in the Flash movie.
Right.
But it could very well be anybody, for that matter. And maybe, who knows, maybe it'll be revealed in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'll be interested to see if they go that route.
He has mentioned that they do, the team at least walks past it yet again.
Yeah,
I don't know but that they reference it or not. Because they're going to bring the body back to this when they're going to resurrect him.
Okay. Yeah, this is the same. This is the same ship in BVS, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that Lex. Essentially asks to explore.
That son of a bitch, Lex Luthor.
You didn't go to this set, did you?
No, I did not. Did you?
I did not. I didn't know if they had a set visit for it or not.
Nope. We did not. I don't think we covered it for Joe Blow. If we did, I don't recall. And that was right around. Yeah, I was editor-in-chief at the time, and we never got anything about that. But as you know, with movie sites, you have hot and cold relations with studios over the years. It just happens that way. When I took over Joe Blow, we weren't exactly best buds with Warner Brothers, and then throughout the course of my time there, WB became a great ally for Joe Blow and got good relations going with them. But it wasn't always that way.
I credit you, Paul.
I did a lot of work. Mostly, I just try to be nice and respectful. I think that goes a long way. Just being a genuine, thankful and good person. You know as well as I do, and in that business, that there are people that are very grateful, good, thankful, great people to be around, and there's some people that are just like, I can't believe the audacity they have to the way they speak and act to other people. It's just the way that it is. And that's again why I always gravitated to hang out with you, because you're like a genuinely nice guy. I'm always like, oh man, thank God Sean's here.
Well, and you're right. I believe, like you do, that you catch more flies with honey, but the sad reality is that the angry and entitled get almost as many opportunities,
which is baffling to me. It's always, you know what though, and I've had deeper discussions, and I could probably say more than you can, but I've had deeper discussions with studio people, where they feel just as frustrated about that too, because in the end it comes down to a numbers game, and that's just sadly the reality of it.
It is. It is. Again, we are 42 minutes into this, and we are nowhere near seeing him in a suit yet.
And I don't feel any of it. I'm just like, oh, this is awesome.
Nope. Yeah, I know. Okay, see, I haven't seen this in its entirety in a long enough time that I don't even remember this aspect of it. I don't remember him removing the ship. I don't remember him, moving it wherever he's moving it to.
I don't either.
Total blank on that.
I remember the ship leaving, but I don't remember where it went.
And he left Lois behind, or he brought it with him? Brought her with him? Well,
he left her. She's just hanging out after he sealed her wounds.
Okay.
And now, I think it's interesting that, they chose to really dive into her journalistic aspect. They could have easily just glossed over that stuff, right? I mean, let's be honest, the Margot Kidder style Lois Lane, she was fun and funny and kind of, she's sexy and but you never really were like, oh man, she's this great journalist. Whereas I think with the Amy Adams Lois Lane, she's a go-getter. She's out there chasing down everything. She really, truly, you feel like she truly believes in her job. She's not there for window dressing.
It's also one of the first times that Zack approaches what would be a defining method of his approach, which is if an alien like Clark arrived on our planet, we would immediately, as a society and as a journalist here, question his existence. You know, like Lois immediately is like, I want to investigate who this is because what I'm seeing is totally unlike anything that we've seen before. And Zack, through his approach, he'll get into the journalistic curiosity of it. In BVS, he leans into the paranoia and tension that comes with the existence of an alien. But they always inform the decisions that he's making creatively.
Yeah. And, you know, and that was always
and because I see it that way, I never like it really does speak to the fact that so many other Superman stories before that, when he shows up, we just as a society embrace him as a hero.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Batman says, you know, like, he has the power to destroy us. You know, do you not understand that? And when it was said out loud, I was like, oh, goddamn, that's right.
And the approach too with this via Snyder and Goyer was to make a film where you could suspend disbelief in a great way, in that it really was meant to tackle Superman as an alien being come to Earth, which is not something that I don't think they ever address or even call him an alien in any of the Donner films or even Singer's film. I don't think they ever say, hey, he's an alien. It's a very easy thing to forget. And they wanted to really, you know, show that this is what that means. And I think it's a great intro for the DCEU. Like, as they go from aliens to metahumans and everything like that. Like, I think that Man of Steel serves as a tremendous birth to this universe. And I just remember watching it, being excited, you know, like they had the empty capsule and all this other stuff. And I was like, man, there's so many places they can go with this from here. And I just love that world that they set up.
How do you feel about Russell Crowe being able to return as the conscience of Jor-El?
I mean, I love it. And I just love seeing Russell Crowe. And I love that he's able to have a dialogue with Kal-El. And it's very close to, again, Mark Waid's Birthright, where that's a very similar thing where he's kind of like being informed by his past with Jor-El. And I just think it's an amazing thing to see, because we didn't get that in the Reeve films, right? Like you got a slight thing where they had the holograms in the Fortress of Solitude, and, you know, basically kind of like goes to school, right? Here it feels more with Crowe's character that they are, it feels more like a father-son relationship rather than him being just a stranger, you know?
Right.
And I like that aspect.
The first few viewings, I viewed it as a cheat. I thought it was a cheat way to bring him back, especially later in the scene where he's guiding Lois through the ship and almost predicting where the villains were going to be from, kind of thing. Yeah. I thought it was a way for the screenplay to cut corners a bit. I've grown to accept it more, especially here when you're getting the history lesson. It's a really beautiful way to explain how Krypton tried to reach out and really establish itself as a power in the universe. But I keep saying it's so different than anything that we saw before.
Yeah.
And I was resistant. You know, I definitely was resistant the first few times I watched it, and I've just grown to embrace it and really understand that these big swings are what I've grown to really love about Man of Steel.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I take into consideration is that Krypton was an advanced civilization. They may not have been able to save their planet, but look at everything else that they did, you know? They are well far advanced beyond us. So to think that they would have a kind of AI that could exist to capture a persona like Jor-El in like a computer simulation, we're not exactly that far off as humans to be able to do these things. So it's easier to swallow in that sense, to capture the essence of an individual to a point that it's an AI that can encapsulate a personality. I find that fascinating. And I think it'll be more fascinating as time goes on and that technology continues to develop in real time.
Do you think we're going to get Russell Crowe in the Snyder Cut?
Man, I don't think so, but I would love it if we did. If we do, that would be amazing.
I think we are.
I have. What do you
think we
think?
are.
You think so? We are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are. I think there's going to be after his resurrection, you're going to get, and this is speculation. I don't know this for people who are listening, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. You're going to get an element like he's going to get the black suit. He's clearly going to get the black suit, and he's going to return to this ship, to this base. And if he's going to return to the base, and because Jor-El is part of the wiring, the intricacies of the ship, because we've seen this shot.
Yeah.
In Justice League Snyder Cut trailers, but he's coming out in the black suit. I bet you he goes back. I think he's going to get 2 significant scenes that are going to evolve the father-son relationship that you just brought up that was relevant since Man of Steel. I think Clark is going to get a significant conversation with Russell Crowe, and I think he's going to get a significant conversation with Kevin Costner yet again. I think both of those men are going to get scenes in Justice League. Especially in 4 hours. Like, if Zack had to trim that cut down to a 2.5 hour, 3 hour cut, to meet theaters back in 2017, those scenes might not have made it. But I think he shot them. And now that we're 4 hours, I think they're going in.
And yeah, and if I were him, I'd put the whole kitchen sink in. It sounds like he has. So the interesting part, so here we finally got Superman. We have Kal-El in the suit, which is amazing. It's important to note that the cape, I think 95% of the time that it was all digital, just because Zack wanted a cape that he could really kind of manipulate and just make it look cool, for lack of any other term. And it's easier to control that way as well. But he looks amazing in this suit. And an interesting thing about Henry Cavill is he was originally cast in a Superman movie called Superman Flyby that was going to be directed by McG. And he was already cast. He was going to play Superman. It ended up falling through. And when he met and screen tested with Zack Snyder, he put on they did at the Warner Brothers lot, and they didn't have a Superman suit on hand. So he wore one of Christopher Reeve's spandex suits just to take a look, and stepped out in the suit. And when he did, nobody laughed. Nobody was like, haha, look, you're in, everybody was just in awe. And Snyder has credited that as one of the reasons why he was immediately cast, because he looked perfect. He looked like Superman, even in the old Christopher Reeve Superman suit that is like a Halloween costume by today's standards, right? It just looked amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that's, just such a great story. And this is very similar to the Mark Waid Birthright comic, where he kind of is flying through all the different places and, learning his powers. It's just such a great scene, because you just feel the impact of somebody like him learning to fly. And you have these scenes, it's the same scene that was used in the poster. Just great stuff. You could feel the joy in this moment, and also the spectacle and everything. And you just haven't seen anything really like this in a Superman movie. It's what you always wanted to see, right?
Not even close. And I mean, you'll get elements of this in the final battle with Zod. Yeah. Where Zack's point of view with his camera, is placed in places where you never saw in a Superman movie before. With the way that he delivers his punches, with the way that the impact of the fight carries on. Yeah. It's brilliant. And we haven't, I can't believe that we're almost an hour into this. It feels like it's been on for 10 minutes.
I know, right?
We made it this far, and we
haven't. It was by so fast.
We haven't once mentioned Hans Zimmer's score.
There's a number of times where I've been I got to say something about Zimmer. But go ahead, leave the Zimmer score, because there's plenty to say about that. We had I'm blanking on his name. The guy who Ludwig Göransson. Yes. On Real Blend recently. Really good. I'm really throwing around terms that the kids are going to know. Ludwig Göransson wrote the score for Tenet, and he also did The Mandalorian. And one of the things that I couldn't wrap my brain around with his work for The Mandalorian, which I think is brilliant, is that he's one of the first people to write original Star Wars music that connected and resonated, whose name is not John Williams. It's not John Williams. Yeah.
I bring this up because that's what Zimmer has done now for Superman. Like, there's a Superman theme that when I hear it, you know, it resonates and connects me to Superman, to Henry Cavill Superman, because of Hans Zimmer.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
a way that I actually have now a little bit forgotten John Williams. And I consider John Williams' Superman theme to be, honestly, this might be blasphemous for anyone who's listening. I think John Williams' Superman theme is his most iconic piece of music. And I know that he's done, you know, Star Wars, and I know that he's done E.T. and Jaws and everything, but his Superman theme song, anyone can hear it. Doesn't matter where you are from in the world. You hear that theme song and you know that it's Superman.
And it's amazing.
And Zimmer had
it's
to do
classic.
something totally different. Yeah. Zimmer had
no
to do
pressure,
totally
Hans Zimmer.
Different. Yeah. And he nails it. He nailed it. And I think it's brilliant. And in that scene specifically, in First Flight, it makes you feel like you are soaring alongside of him. And the music is just as important as the visuals are.
Yeah, and Hans is he is absolutely amazing. I mean, the guy is, you know, he's had decades-long career. I've been a fan from the early days. Like, I probably have more Hans Zimmer scores than I have of anything else. And he's a master. But to follow on the heels of John Williams' Superman score, that's no small feat. And to create something every bit as iconic that transcends into today's modern sensibilities is amazing that he was able to accomplish that. And I can't wait to hear it in Zack Snyder's Justice League again, because we didn't hear it.
I know.
And I love Danny Elfman, but dude, his Justice League wedding score is atrocious. It is it's just like
he
this
just
grab bag
recycled
of
too
themes.
many bits.
Oh,
I
hate it. So here we have probably, I would say, the second most controversial scene of this film, and
easily.
I've gone on long Twitter threads about this and things like that, and I kind of touched on it earlier when we were talking about, you know, these decisions, and the way that I resolve this, and I don't have a problem. Like, people are like, why didn't he just save his dad and just show everybody? I think it perfectly shows the fact that he's dealing with an alien and a human mind at the same time, because he has a human father saying, don't do this. And he has this alien side that, but I can do this. And his father is saying, no, don't. And you see the pain and the horror in Clark's face coming up, because all it takes is a second. That's all it takes, is a second for him to do or not to do. And we see that come around at the end when he's confronting Zod. All it takes is a second. These lessons come back to him. Act or don't act. And I think that it all comes together in a way that you're like, oh shit, it makes sense. I get why people don't like the scene, because you don't want to see Jonathan Kent die. I don't either, you know, and you don't want to see Superman like not do something. But you also have to understand, he's a teenager in this scene. He's a kid. Think about when you were a teenager, you know, and it's like you want to think, oh, Superman, he just always knows the right thing to do. But that's not true of anybody on this planet. We don't always know the right thing to do, and we don't always know when is the best time to act or not act. And that is what I feel from this scene, and that's why I think it's so powerful. And it should give you an emotional response. It's the point of it. He's like,
everything you said is correct.
He's like asking permission right now. Let me save you. And his dad's like, no. And look at him. He's, you know, he knows, like, all it takes is a second. 1 second. I could do it. And then it's too late. It's too late. I love it. That's what I love about that scene. And I think it's all about the way you watch this scene. And I think some people watch it and they're just like, what? That's bullshit. He should have just done something. I'm like, you're missing the point. This is a character. This is a person. A human and an alien at the same time.
It probably has taken me till right now just to really embrace that scene. Everything that you say is correct. You're 100% correct. You know, the motivation behind the scene is all there. I won't say hate, because I don't hate, but I deeply dislike the execution of it. I think that they had to write a better version than the dog got stuck in the car.
Yeah.
I hate that it's the dog that got stuck in the car. I'm sorry, man. Everything you said, there had to come up with a better way to get Jonathan Kent in mortal danger.
Yeah, maybe people instead of cars or something like that. That probably would have made a little more sense.
just anything else besides, because the dog got stuck in the car is such a hacky bit that, you know, Roland Emmerich uses. It's a Roland Emmerich bit in a Zack Snyder movie, and it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I get it. It's tough. That's a tough one to resolve.
Aspires to greater things, you know, and that's in the tornado element. It's where's the dog?
You heard it here, folks. Sean O'Connell wants the dog dead. John O'Connell will sacrifice. So I mean, I have a dog, and I love my dog, and I don't know. In the sense of a tornado coming like that, and it's that close, I honestly can't say yes or no whether I'd go and get my dog. Maybe that makes me a bad person because I'm not saying emphatically yes, but I also have a son. And the truth is, if I have to choose between my child and the dog, I'm going to choose my child 100% of the time. Them's just the rules. I'm sorry. That's just the way it's going to be.
Would you have left the dog in the car in the first place? If you were scurrying out of the car with a twister on the horizon,
probably
would you have
not,
left the dog in the first place?
Probably not. But I mean, at the same time, you know, it's a hurricane and shit's crazy. It's going down so fast. You know, people always forget stupid shit when crazy things happen.
Okay. All right.
But I mean, a dog is kind of a weird thing to forget. Like, oh shit, we forgot the dog. Like, how do you forget the dog? You're sitting in your lap.
That's what I don't like, man. I do not like that execution.
Well, you know, it's the same. So I watched this movie Greenland, which maybe you've seen. I'm not sure, with Gerard Butler recently. And there's a point where they get out of a car to go into this shelter place. And their kid has like medication, like a medication bag. He has to have it like every 2 hours, whatever. He's diabetic, right?
Yes.
And they get out of the car and they just take off running to like, we'll just run there. We're almost there. And they run there and get there, but then they realize they forgot the medication. I just don't see how. That's one of those things where I'm like, wait a minute. This kid has to have these shots like every few hours. He's diabetic. That would be the first thing you would check for. Like getting out of that car before you go anywhere. Do we have the medicine? Put your hands on it.
Sure, of course.
You know, when I was in the military, we did like what we call a hands-on inspection. You don't just look at a soldier and you say, hey, you got all your stuff? Yeah, man, I got it. Okay, cool. Hell no. Put your hand on it and show me. It's a hands-on inspection. You know, there's no excuse. Like if you don't do a hands-on inspection, that's what will always get you in the long run. It's like, show me that you have everything you're supposed to have. And that's kind of, you know, what people, if you're in an emergency situation, that's some good advice to apply. Literally put your hand on everything you think you're going to need.
Dude, also Greenland is much better than I thought it was going to be.
I loved it. I kind of expected it to be a mildly entertaining disaster flick, but it's like the antithesis of, you mentioned Emmerich. It's like the antithesis of an Emmerich film because it's about the characters rather than the spectacle, whereas it's reversed for an Emmerich movie. And I enjoyed getting into the characters, and I was like, I was watching it with my son, and he was like biting his nails and freaking out, and he was like pacing the room. He was so into it. And by the time it was over, he was like, "That I think that's my favorite movie I've ever seen." And he's 12, which is right around that age when you start to like really start to discern films, right? Like, like up until about 12, you kind of just love everything. Oh, I saw a movie, I loved it, you know. And now, you start around 12 is when you start to get to the age where you're like, I don't think I really liked it. For me, it was Universal Soldier, which I saw, and that's when I was about 12, and I saw it. And I came home and I was like, I think it's my new favorite movie. And then I was sitting there thinking about it. I was like, no, I didn't really love it. I like parts of it, but I'm not ready to put that in the top spot. And that was the first time where I was like, it was like a watershed moment for me because I was like, well, that's it. The latest movie I saw is not my favorite now. So what do I do now? It's like changed my whole world. Now I had to start making lists.
Oh God, we love lists.
Where would we be without lists
in this job?
I actually hate lists, and I like them at the same time. I can't. It's a crazy duality.
They're fascinating. We got to mention General Swanwick and Harry Lennix, who we now know to be Martian Manhunter,
which I fully anticipate seeing in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Completely. And I don't know if I'm sure you saw it. But Jim Lee did a cover for a Justice League comic cover for the DC stuff that has a rendition of Martian Manhunter, which I'm guessing is probably very well informed from Zack and from Zack's cut in terms of how that was drawn. So I'm very much looking forward to.
But somebody asked an interesting question. Someone asked Zack an interesting question on one of these. He's been dropping onto a lot of fan feeds leading up to this. I love the fact that his promotional campaign for this Justice League has been, I'm going to go on the streams of the fans who made this happen. Like, he's not popping up in all the normal places. He's going to do a traditional junket, but the lead up to this has been like, he pours himself a bourbon and he goes on someone's stream on a Friday night and just talks about this stuff. Yeah. It's the most Zack Snyder way to do it.
I mean, I'm trying to get him on the Beard and the Bald. I'm hoping that it'll happen, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, him going out there and just like showing that support really shows, because dude, you know as well as I do that like it's the fans that really did make Zack Snyder's Justice League happen. Like the fans are the shock pads of Zack Snyder's Justice League. It helps that Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot also tweeted that same support, but in the end, it is those positive, I must stress, positive fans for Zack Snyder's cut that really made it happen. And it's amazing. You know, that's what got Toby Emmerich's attention. That's what got, you know, all of this going. You can find out more in Sean's book. He's got the full story.
Hey, thank you.
I can work in those plugs all day, but yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to reading it. And I'll be, like I said, I'll be picking up this weekend, and I'm kind of like you, like you and I watching this now is like the start of my getting warmed up for the 18th. So
it's coming soon, man. So what he confirmed on a stream was that someone asked him like, was Swanwick Martian Manhunter the entire time, or when we eventually see Martian Manhunter in Justice League, does he just choose to copy General Swanwick?
Good question.
For the scenes that you want? Like, is Swanwick another person? And Zack basically confirmed that no, he's been Swanwick the entire time. So in all the scenes that we're seeing General Swanwick, it is John Jones hiding out on our planet and monitoring the situation.
Which makes sense, you know. I mean, that's a great position to be in, to monitor everything, right? And you see, even in BVS, like he's constantly helping. Like he's never been an antagonist against anything that they're doing. He's always been an ally. So it makes perfect sense. It lines up.
It's impressive to have the foresight to think that far in advance, though, to lay the seeds of. Well, like, are you watching WandaVision?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to watching it tonight, the finale.
I was really impressed with the way that they worked in Wanda from Age of Ultron, having powers and addressing that she used her probability powers to stop the bomb that landed in their apartment.
Yes. Well, and like that dude, it ties into, you know, the fact it's almost like you can. That's the brilliance of that show right now, and what they're doing is that you could jump back and build upon everything that was done before, and you could even change it, alter it, whatever you need to do. There really is such a beautiful door into the X-Men universe, and it feels like that they're tapping into that a little bit, but showing that she had powers prior to encountering the Infinity Stone, the Mind Stone, shows that she, you know, very well. I kept waiting for them to say you're a mutant rather than you're the Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
Which is essentially kind of the same thing. Look, she had powers, and ultimately the Infinity Stone kind of like awakened those genes, because we know that anybody that reads X-Men comics knows that sometimes you're born with your mutant genes already activated, and sometimes they're activated otherwise. Same thing as Deadpool. That's how Deadpool became Deadpool, is they put him in that machine, and they basically, you know, messed with his DNA and got those genes that he already had inherently in him to awaken. So there's so much room there. Feige is a genius, man. Feige is a genius. And I always viewed kind of Zack Snyder as like the Feige of DCEU, but unfortunately, however you want to look at it, they just kind of didn't embrace him. And that's where you know, they listened to critics when they should have been listening to box office and fans, but that's just the way it went.
Well, I think they also kind of hoped that Jeff Johns would become the Feige of the DCEU, and he clearly turned out not to be. So,
no. I mean, Johns is still involved. I still like John's comic work. I do still read comics that he writes. But yeah, I don't think that he was essentially. I just don't think he's that guy. You know, whether he's. No. I think he's more of a creative individual for the comic scene, and maybe that's the best place for him.
Yeah,
but
you know Rob Liefeld. Liefeld's really vocal on social media, and he and I got into it back and forth a little bit because I said that I almost wished that Jim Lee would become. It's weird that we keep. I keep doing this. I see other people kind of doing it too. Like DC needs a Feige, right? Mm-hmm. As if you could just replicate a Feige. Like I honestly think Feige is one of a kind.
He really is. I mean,
but I thought
he is. He's amazing.
If Jim Lee could become that guiding, like you need someone who's got the hand on the rudder, who isn't involved in the filmmaking. They need to be big picture thinking, I think.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Feige is not directing the next Ant-Man, you know. He's envisioning the big picture. And Liefeld got into it with me because he's like, Jim Lee knows nothing about film. He doesn't understand, like he's a comic guy. Let him be a comic guy. Yeah. And I was like, right, but can't he kind of be? And Rob's like, no, he's just not. He doesn't think of it that way. And Rob must know Jim Lee much more than I do because I barely know Jim Lee. But that's interesting. You have to find somebody who has a business sense for film and the creative aspect as well too. And those people are just they don't exist. They're few and far between.
Yep. And I think the biggest draw to someone like Feige and someone like Snyder, for that matter, is that Feige understands the source material. He understands where to look for the answers that he needs. And it goes back to a story I read about him early days, because he was one of the early producers on the X-Men films with Lauren Schuler Donner and them. And he remembers being in a writer's room, and they were all trying to figure out some kind of problem that they had. They're like trying to solve some issue. Like, God, I don't know what to do. And they had X-Men comics in there, and Feige just picks up one of the comics. He's like, guys, the answers are all right here. Like Feige understood that everything that needs to be represented in these films has already been done. Like the groundwork has been laid. You just have to cull from it. And that's what Feige has done with all the MCU films, right? Like he's pulled different storylines and he's morphed them and changed them to fit this, kind of overall narrative, but paid homage and respect to those roots. And I always say, like, if you're going to adapt a book, if you're going to adapt a comic, know why you're adapting it. If you're like, oh, I like this story, but we're going to change this. And it's like, why are you even adapting it? Just go make something else. You're just going to ruin that. And I think Feige understood that. And I think Snyder understands that as well, where he's like, I remember seeing the trailer for BVS, the full trailer, and seeing like the Robin costume in the glass case and seeing the fact that this was a seasoned Batman. And I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, dude, I remember tweeting about it, like live from Hall H. I was like, we are now in a DC universe where there is a history. And that fascinated me so much. I was like, we're in a time and a place where there is a history in this universe that we can pull from. We don't have to sit through 1,000 origin movies. This is amazing. Like, that's what I was like so enthralled by. And I think comes with Snyder's understanding of the material. And so I think, somebody like Snyder could easily be that Feige. But I think right now WB they're still kind of not really quite sure where they're going with all of that. But I think it's starting to come clear with the multiverse stuff. But I would love to see, just like I know a lot of our fans would love to see, is a restored Snyderverse or a completion of his vision that started here with Man of Steel.
Right.
I guess we'll see.
I feel like they have spent so much time lately trying to unravel the work that they did to chase a shared cinematic universe. Yeah. By, connecting everything. I'm with you that Zach absolutely could be that person, but I don't ever want him to have to serve a larger story. I want him to just tell the stories that he wants to tell. Yeah. And I feel like DC has gotten themselves to a place where everything doesn't have to be connected, and it's a better place creatively for them to be.
The multiverse is the answer to all of this. It really is. Yeah. And Marvel's doing the same thing. You know, the multiverse is the answer. You don't have to play by rules anymore. You make your own rules.
Right.
You want to have Michael Keaton Batman? Bring him back. You want to have
Right,
Tobey
right.
Maguire and you want to have Andrew Garfield in a Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland? Done. Multiverse it.
Yeah.
That's going to be the new
Yeah.
thing. It's going to be multiverse it. Just multiverse it. You're good.
Yep. Yeah. It's true. It's true. But when you
So-
look at the DC slate,
Yeah.
how exciting the DC slate is right now with
Oh.
a Matt Reeves Batman, with a James Gunn Suicide Squad, you know, and they're not forced to connect to each other in any way, kind of way. I just think that's refreshing.
And they're not forced, and yet they still are connecting. Like, were you on the Suicide Squad set visit?
Yes.
Okay. It was you. Who else was there? There was a bunch of people on that one. But, I mean, without giving away anything, it does connect, but it doesn't have to connect.
Right,
And the same thing with, Black Adam is going to connect and all that other stuff, but they're not beholden to it. That's the great thing.
Right.
As you said, they don't have to, like, call up. They don't got to call James Gunn, like, James, what did you do with so-and-so? Because we don't know what to do. Like, they can just do it, But there's got to be some trade-off, They got to be some kind of communication, but not to the level that you would, that they were beholding themselves to before.
I love this aspect of this too, because Clark has just made a very quick truce with his adopted family, his adopted planet race.
Yep.
And now here he is, an ambassador almost, standing there, to the Kryptonians who are arriving. And he's got to stand for our planet. And he's basically just had this put on him in the past 2 minutes.
And it's fun to watch this scene now, knowing that Stanwyck is Martian Manhunter, literally standing in front of. You think about it, he could have, at any moment, revealed himself and gotten into this fight. But in a sense, he's allowing, Kal-El to deal with the situation. He's still kind of like watching from afar.
Chris Meloni's a total badass too. I love him as a character actor.
I think, in my fantasy world, which I don't think is that far of a stretch, that he and Feora are a couple living in the Phantom Zone, and they could be broken out. That is my theory. I think that they're actually in love with each other, and it would make a perfect match. If the two of them were marooned on an island, it wouldn't be difficult for them to hook up and to become a couple. And essentially, that's what because that's where the ship goes, to the Phantom Zone. Towards the end. Yeah. So there's no reason they couldn't still be alive out there. I would love to. Just put me in charge, WB. Call me. You can call Sean too. We'll work together. We'll be producing partners.
Hey, great. Thank you.
We're bringing back Meloni and we're bringing back Antje because she's awesome. And we're going to pull them out of the Phantom Zone and put them back in.
Because you don't age in the Phantom Zone, I'm assuming.
I don't know if you
age. It's been
age
decades. And they look the same.
But Meloni and Antje, I'm sure, probably both. And if I'm mispronouncing her name, I'm sorry. But either way, like they're still good enough to come on out and play.
From this moment on, the rest of this film is just a pedal to the foot on the gas pedal.
And I love it.
Badass.
I love it.
It's
like
incredible.
It's growing up, like I remember I always loved Superman 2 better than Superman 1 as a kid because there was fighting. There was there was a battle. And it was like you finally get to see Superman punch something. And I remember I sat through Superman Returns hopeful back then. This didn't exist at the time. That I was going to see we're going to see some Superman action. And Superman punches nothing in Superman Returns. He doesn't throw a punch. He catches a bullet with his eyeball, and that's about the coolest thing in the movie. And you're just like,
the falling plane sequence is pretty cool.
Yeah, the opening scene where he does that is awesome, but it never achieves that level of coolness again. And there's literally no fights. Like, it's so boring. Like, Lex Luthor beats the shit out of Superman in Superman Returns. Like, come on.
That's why I thought that this movie was a direct answer to that. It was like,
it's like, get the hell
fans
out.
absolutely were mad that he didn't fight anybody in Superman Returns, and so in this one they're like, you're going to see him fight.
Man of Steel is like kicks sand in Superman Returns' face and tells him to get off the beach. Get off my beach. So here we get
Now,
some more backstory in terms of the Kryptonians, how they sent out basically all these, ships that went out and about, because you see these guys break out and then they start to find like different Kryptonian ships around there. Just think that could be Gal Gadot if she had been cast. That's so crazy to even think that, but it's true.
it is crazy. I think she lucked out. I think she got the better role.
Wonder Woman or chick that dies or sort of dies. I'll take Wonder Woman. Even though, in my opinion, Wonder Woman 84 was a travesty, I think Zack Snyder's Justice League will put her back on top.
I liked it when I watched it the first time through, and then I went back to revisit it, and I was like,
I'm never watching it again. Never watching it again. I watched it twice, and I was just like, I can't even believe how bad this is. Like, the first time I watched it, I was kind of like, it's like for any of these movies that are super hyped, you're kind of like, it's difficult to get it all in one watch. And then you go back that second time and I was just like, dude, I can't resolve any of this. This is awful. Like, this is like just the most unrewarding watch ever. I'm never watching this movie again. It's true. I literally can't think of any reason minus torture that I would watch Wonder Woman 84. All the respect to everybody involved, but it's just not a good movie. Like,
yeah, it's weird too, because like it's largely the same creative team, and I'm not quite sure what happened.
Why it's baffling. And I've seen, because Zack Snyder's name is on as like a producer or executive producer. And I can't imagine that Zack watches that movie and thinks it's great. I know his style and what he makes. I think that's more of like the producer talking in that sense, which makes sense. I mean, it's his job, but I can't imagine that he's like, oh yeah, Wonder Woman 84. That's what I would have done. No way.
Yeah.
Like Zack would have made a very different movie.
Yeah.
And you can feel Zack's fingerprints on the first Wonder Woman, which I think is great. They're all over. So here you can see this is kind of the black suit Superman if you look closely there. It's actually the first time you do see him in the black suit is right here. A lot of people kind of forget about that because it seems like it's, the backlight is kind of drowning it out, but it's actually a black suit that he's wearing.
Does he know that he has the Codex inside of him right now or not yet?
I don't think he does.
I don't think he does either.
Well, I mean, in this part is where he's being revealed to kind of come to grips with it. That he's got something more.
Like, you don't go into a Superman movie expecting to see him getting swallowed quicksand
by
style
skulls,
in a pile
right?
of skulls.
How cool is that?
It's so
like, it really is the antithesis to Superman Returns, like you really are getting something that is so vastly different than the Donner era. And I think, again, I've said this already 1,000 times, but I think that's what jarred a lot of people from this movie. They're like, that's not my Superman. I'm like, well, that Superman doesn't exist anymore. This is a new creative team and they're still honoring all those great things about that Superman, but it's been taken into the new era. And, people already showed that they didn't want Donner Superman's back with Superman Returns. Like, you had your chance, you blew it. Now you got Man of Steel, which, in my opinion, having grown up with all of those movies, this is my favorite. This is my favorite Superman film, without question.
But it's mine as well too, and it goes without saying that this reminds me even more so that it is a reaction to and an answer to the negative reaction to Superman Returns. These movies are not made in a vacuum by any stretch.
No,
there clearly was and this speaks to how reactionary Warner Brothers as a studio is with the DCEU specifically. They don't have a guiding light.
Yeah,
they listen too much to what people say, and fans didn't like Superman Returns, so they were willing to go down whatever path Snyder was going to take them. And Snyder had the ability to make this. I think this is his purest DC film, because he had, with Nolan protecting him, he had the ability to make it as much as he wanted to.
Yeah.
He had to compromise with the theatrical cut for BVS, but then his ultimate edition is a great piece to this.
Yeah.
But then, the studio, again, reactionary, mainstream isn't embracing this because mainstream doesn't quite know exactly what they want necessarily. And the studio decides after 2 movies, we got to switch gears. We got to, instead of just allowing your filmmaker to maintain his vision and let the people catch up to it. But I get it. They're expensive movies.
Yeah.
You know, the balance of the industry and the business side of the industry is broken. And these movies cost too much money to make that if one of them doesn't meet what should be an impossible standard of $1 billion, you know, they're considered not quite failures, but like too dangerous. You know, like we can't continue to bankroll this.
Yeah,
and that's not right. That's not.
Got to hit that $1 billion sweet spot or you're nothing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because even like the MCU movies, you know, a lot of the standalones, they don't make $1 billion.
Right.
And, you know, they continue to make those. So I think there's got to be a level of trust and a level of investment. And I think that's where Warner Brothers falls short, is that they're not willing to stay the course. You know, when you invest, you risk. You know, that's just like the very basic principles of investing. You invest, there are highs and lows. There's the market highs and lows, and you have to stay the course, you know. And they're too quick to sell. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, you know, throughout the course of the next few movies, and I'm really hoping with Zack Snyder's Justice League, that they can see the benefits of investment. And that's really, you know, I was talking about this on Twitter the other day. I was like, listen, it's great that everybody that rallied behind the Snyder Cut is getting it, but y'all need to show up. And you guys need to like educate other people about it that don't know what the Snyder Cut is. Like, I see friends that I know that are comic nerds and fans, and they don't know what the Snyder Cut is. And I'm like, dude, that's where the problem's going to be. If you think that if this is made just to appease a bunch of Twitter fans, it's going to be a flop. It's going to be a massive flop, and it's going to be proof positive for WB that, hey, see there, why should we do this? Why should we let somebody do whatever they want? This is what you get, nothing. So people need to show up. I keep trying to use the hashtag like crash the servers. I think whether you've already seen it or not, you need to turn up at 11:59 a.m. and be ready to hit play on March 17th, and just be ready to go for as soon as that movie drops.
I got a question though. How do we know? How will we know? Streaming services hide their numbers. It's not
they
like
don't
box
tell us
office
anything, but so we won't know in terms of seeing those numbers, but they will know.
Yeah.
So, you know, for them, if it's a huge success, they may not tell us numbers, but they'll tell us if it's a success or not. And that in turn will develop whether or not, or will lead to whether or not they continue to greenlight things from that particular property. So I think that's going to be very telling. I love this scene right here, this dialogue between Kal-El and Jor-El.
We wanted you to know what it was like to be human first. Wow. It's such a brilliant way to approach
that line, and then you can save all of them is just awesome. And then this, you know, more of the Christian iconography there, you know, with him floating out like Christ, you know. It's a great, you know, people get annoyed. So there's people that get annoyed by it, but the truth is, like, it is a great, it's a great way to tie that together, you know, because he is a Christ-like figure in that sense. You know, he's an alien. He's from another world. He's basically a god living on earth amongst people. Like the Christian aspect could not be more on the nose as far as that goes, just as a character, not just for this movie. So
I don't think Zack gets enough credit as an action director also.
Oh man, he's like, I always say he's like the brainier Michael Bay. Like Zack can do that big cool guy shit, but make it not cheesy. Make it like, oh, that was awesome.
Well, and you know, when you see bad action choreography, like when it's making your stomach turn because of the, you know, the motion, it's too jarring. And too many times, like, I'll argue with a film that, like, you've gone to such great lengths to set this stage, let us see it. Zack always lets you see it. His camera is not cheating, you know, to zoom through shit. He's staging it in a way that you feel the weight of it, and you, if it's an epic shot, he's giving you the epic shot. You're gonna live in it for a minute or two, and figure it out. His editing is not jarring. His editing is not choppy.
Yeah.
And I just think he's a tremendous visual action director, and you're going to see it in the Kansas fight.
Yeah.
Soon.
Well, and that to me, that's where
some...
this right here is where it really kicks off. And I remember watching it, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like, amazing. Like, he's punching Zod. He's like, you think you could threaten my mother? Like, I mean, that sequence, which is coming up here in just a couple of minutes or a minute.
Yep.
I remember seeing it in the theater. I was like, yes. Like, that to me, like, made the movie. I was like, here we are, finally. You know?
Yep.
It's just wailing on him. Yeah, it's just amazing.
I mean, it's comic accurate representation of Superman for me the first time. You know, it's seeing it for the first time when he's fighting.
It's awesome. Yeah, see, this is where everything really starts to just pull you in. So awesome. Here it comes. Here we go.
Oh, this is great.
Like, that's awesome. I mean, that is like something you'd see in a Michael Bay movie, but here, you know, you've got stakes. It feels like, damn, look at this. Just.
You're right. The brainier Michael Bay is a great way to put it.
Like that. Look at that. This is just amazing. That going through that 7-Eleven, the car flip, everything. Like, that's something you would traditionally see in a Michael Bay movie. And by the way, I'm not knocking Michael Bay. I think Michael Bay is an amazing filmmaker. The problem that I have with Michael Bay is in kind of the cheesier aspect with his character work. Visually, he is a genius. Like, there's no question. But I think Snyder is somebody that really deeply invests in who these people are.
Bay does not. Bay is not interested in his characters. He's barely interested in his plot anymore.
Yeah.
It's really just how to get to the next set piece.
Yes. It's very much like, dude, let's do this. It's going to be awesome. Like, and he's very technical. I did an interview with him for 13 hours, which I think is coincidentally his most honest film, with the best performances. And, you know, he's very much wants to talk about the technical aspect, but not much to say about the actors or the characters per se. You know, just like, oh, I wanted to do this shot and this and this and this and this, but, you know, not a lot about the characters. Whereas with, you know, I feel like with Snyder, you get the best of both worlds in that sense. He'll talk technical and he'll talk characters.
Yep.
And here we have this great battle. So this was shot in Plainfield, Illinois, where I actually lived in that area nearby. I lived in Aurora and Downers Grove area at that time. Not at the time they were making this, but just prior to it. And it's very much kind of like Americana farmland in that sense. So they really chose a great location to shoot this.
Look at the size of that big son of a bitch who's coming down the street. That dude is daunting.
Oh, that's so funny. I just love this. Like, and you know, we're going to start, this is where it kind of kicks off, where people got, and I know we'll bring it up again here shortly, but people got so upset over the destruction stuff. They started to label it destruction porn and 9/11 imagery and stuff like that. And my response to that is always, have you ever read a comic book? Because every week you can go to a comic shop and you can pick up any number of comics that destroy entire cities, one issue per month. So every month you get to see, and then every week, depending on the titles you pick up, they're destroying cities, people, committing genocide, whatever. But then all of a sudden you see it in a movie and people like lose their mind. Excuse me.
God bless you. Also, it's integral to the fabric of this story. Like, this story is trying to examine the consequences of a being like this being on our planet.
Yeah.
And if there were fights at this level where the destruction wasn't shown, you'd critique it for that reason.
Yeah.
You'd say, like, how on earth did they have a massive fight like this where things weren't destroyed around them? It's a no-win situation. You have to show this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what you turn up for too for a Superman movie. But piggybacking on what you just said, Jor-El says at the beginning when he's like, "Oh, I'm going to send him to Earth," and she's like, "They'll destroy him," and he says, "How can they? He'll be a god to them."
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
You're seeing gods among us fight. What do you think gods among us fighting would look like? Do you think gods? I mean, if you studied Greek mythology, the gods did not look favorably on humans. They used humans. Right. They punished humans. They did not care. Humans were, their underlings, for lack of a better term. And, if they wanted to set upon destruction, they set upon destruction. And that's kind of what this is going on here. This is like Greek gods beating the shit out of each other. And this is what happens when Greek gods do that.
And the Kryptonians move so fast.
That scene there where that scene where Superman is like flying towards them, they grab him midair. I mean, and then they throw him and she punches him. Like,
oh, right there.
When have we ever seen that, like with a Superman movie or a superhero movie for that matter? We haven't even seen that in an MCU movie. There's not. Nope. I mean, there's not a lot of flying characters in the MCU movie outside of like Iron Man. You're just kind of like, there's not a lot of flying going on. There's some. There's some. Thor will throw himself into the air, but there's not a lot of that.
Marvel does some stuff in Endgame. That's they're starting to explore in the MCU characters that are as strong as Superman, and I think they'll start to explore some of the visual ways to have their representation, but it wasn't done like this. And Zack did this years
in 2013 for sure.
Yeah. Look at this.
I mean, I just remember being pumped seeing that. And the other thing we got to talk about here is Henry Cavill's Superman barbaric yawp, which I love.
Right.
Like his yell. I think I just recently found out that some people like had a problem with that. I think it's amazing. Like that he's got this like why wouldn't he have it? And Christopher Reeve had that too. That was like kind of a staple of the Christopher Reeve Superman. The scene where he finds dead Lois before he spins the earth backwards. He has this, this passionate yell. It's amazing. And Henry Cavill's just got a great barbaric yawp. I love it.
I would give anything for Henry Cavill to get one more chance. And maybe the Snyder Cut is that one more chance, but so much of this movie, and we kind of talked about it while we're going through it, is that he's not Superman until late in the film, right?
Yeah.
And then BVS to me is a better Batman movie than it is a better Superman movie, because I think that it spent a lot of time by design setting up the dichotomy of Batman and Superman. And I thought Ben Affleck was perfectly cast.
Yeah.
So I want a traditional Superman movie where Henry Cavill gets to be Superman for the entire time and faces off against a villain, under the watchful eye of Zack, if we're going to do it that way. I'd love to see him get one more shot. If they truly do reboot the franchise and Cavill doesn't get a chance to continue in his own sort of side project, that would be a huge missed opportunity for me, because I think he's so good in the part.
I will be genuinely upset. Like, listen, I'm going to go on with my life. When I say genuinely upset, I mean genuine. Listen, I've lived life. It's a movie. I get it. But when I say genuinely upset in terms of, just the way film goes, the way this business goes, I'll be upset that I feel like they did not really take full advantage, and that boat's going to miss Cavill completely. And I think that's just, it's too bad. More than anything, it's too bad. And I'm fine if they bring another Superman in. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. I probably would still watch it, but he can exist alongside Cavill's Kal-El, especially if they're looking to do what is it, Calvin Harris or the Black Superman, one of the Black Supermen. Mm-hmm. Totally support it. That's cool. Fine. But replacing Kal-El, I think, is a mistake, a tremendous error. And I think doing it now doesn't really make sense. And it's not needed because you have the multiverse now. You don't have to do that. You don't have to say, hey, this is this now. You could say, oh, hey, here's another Superman. Okay, fine. And bring Cavill back anytime. But I do often wonder if Cavill has some kind of issue with the studio. It's been odd Okay, so I think you've seen that one video where he's like holding up the Superman doll and then he drops it down and you're just kind of like, what is he trying to say? I feel like negotiation wise, there must be more going on behind the scenes with Cavill, and I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's possible that there could be some, pushback from him or whatever the case may be that has caused these issues, which goes back to Shazam. They had fully anticipated that Cavill was going to show up, and then he didn't. And I still don't really have a really good feeling as to why that didn't happen. So I'm very curious.
Well, I've had a lot of conversations with people who, in this movement in the fan base, who want to see restore the Snyderverse.
Yeah.
And on paper, it's a wonderful idea. But you're right in the fact that there are so many moving pieces on that board. And one of the elements is the actors have been put through hell for this.
Yeah.
Not hell, by actor standards.
But for their job. Like police officers and medical professionals, they go through hell. But yes, in their community, in their profession, absolutely, yes.
They got jerked around at every level, at multiple steps of this journey.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't blame them if they turned around and said, I'm not doing it anymore, Cavill honestly doesn't need it at this point now.
He's got The Witcher
himself.
And I love The Witcher. I'm going to watch season 2 when it comes out. I quite enjoy it. And I think that Cavill is he's a great actor that I'll watch in pretty much anything, really. I wish he was doing more stuff. But I'm with you. I would absolutely love to see him as Superman again. I'd actually like to see him as Superman again multiple times. I think he's a great Superman, and I think it really just comes down to the marriage of the right story, the right creatives. But as far as Cavill, he just needs to show up. He's the easy one, right? Like, he's played Superman. He knows this character. He's still in great shape. He'll be in great shape for the movie. He just needs to show up. What really needs to happen is the kind of a marriage of creative ideas. And that's where I feel like Warner Brothers has fallen short, Yeah. And I feel like, they're not Warner Brothers, like many studios today. They're not always following the principles of hiring the best people. A lot of times they're hiring for any other myriad of reasons, which I won't go into, but anything other than hiring just the best people to do the job. And that disrupts everything too. And I can't wait till we get beyond that point where we can start just hiring the best creative people to do a job rather than trying to fill a slot. And I feel like that's what's kind of happening, and it's too bad. But ultimately, I would love to see Cavill back as Superman. I'd love to see him fight Brainiac. I'd love to see him fight, any of the villains that are out there. He has a ton, like Superman has a ton of villains he could fight. But I think most people want to see Brainiac, and I get that. But I just can't imagine, or I don't want to imagine, Cavill being out for good after Zack Snyder's Justice League. That would honestly be too bad.
My hope, honestly, is that it dominates the conversation long enough to have an impact. I don't want it to be a flash in the pan where for a weekend people talk about it. And that's part of the reason why I was a bigger proponent of it being a weekly thing, because the weekly segments just allows for that water cooler talk.
Yeah.
And it allows people to always know where you are in the story with other fans.
Yes.
Like, it's hard if you want to talk about some things that happened on it and people can be like, I didn't get that far, or no, I haven't got into it yet. But not to keep going back to Marvel, but like WandaVision has sort of proven that on a weekly basis, people are talking about what's happening in that show. And I wanted that for the Snyder Cut. I wanted the Snyder Cut, even if Zack, envisions it as a 4-hour movie, I thought it could have a better cultural punch, if it came out on a weekly basis and gave people time to process it.
It definitely would have had, I think, just kind of that episodic nature in terms of being something that people gravitate towards now. For sure. And I think that, again, the biggest problem is going to be people that just don't know, which is a bigger population of people don't know than do, that are going to go on to HBO Max and see Zack Snyder's Justice League there, and they're going to be like, what is this? I already saw Justice League. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So you're like, no, it's different. And they're like, it's 4 hours. I'm good. You know, like that's where, you know, the people in the movement and the supporters, or just even casual supporters, you know, need to take it upon themselves to educate, you know, your everyman and say, no, this is actually something really special. This is what happened. You should check it out. Give people that incentive.
Paul, there's a book that they can pick up if they would like to. There's a book that they could pick up if they would like to.
There's a book you could read by Sean O'Connell that will catch you up to speed in no time.
But think about if the first hour came out, right? And the skeptics who, you know, weren't thinking they were going to check it out, first hour plays and people are like, God damn, the quality on this is top notch.
Yeah.
That would coax enough people to be like, all right, I'll give it a shot, you know, and go into it. It needs that kind of positive word of mouth, I think, to once it's out, to educate people of saying like, oh no, this is really different than what, because just revisiting this is reminding me of just how vastly different his storytelling is and his style is, and how it's, I mean, when you think about what we're going to see, even if it mirrors a couple of the same storytelling beats that are part of the theatrical cut, things like, you know, the fight at Monument Park when he's been resurrected and he has to fight the other members of the League, it's going to be done so much better than what the version that we got to see.
And that's what I'm so excited for. Just like, I can't wait to see what was meant to be seen, what was, you know, built upon from this to that. Just this continued narrative is really what makes it exciting to want to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. Is, you know, it all begins here where, you know, this storyline is set and you see how Man of Steel bleeds into BVS, and then we never got to see BVS bleed into Justice League. And I remember the end of BVS, you know, you're seeing like the dirt rise on the grave or on the coffin, and I was like, oh shit. And you know, I'm a film journalist. I was working for Joe Blow, so I'm like, yeah, fuck, I know what's going on. I know like Zack's supposed to do like 3 more Justice League movies. Like, this is gonna be amazing.
Yep.
But everybody else in the audience, I remember they're like, what? Huh? They killed Superman? What happened? You know, like they were not prepared for that in any way.
Yeah.
But there you have it.
It's pretty quick to dive into Doomsday and the death of Superman in your second DC movie.
Well, I've always said this, and I'll reiterate it again here. I always felt that BVS was too soon. I think there should have been a solo Batman film, preferably directed by Snyder, first, establishing Batman within the DCEU, then do BVS. It just would have made perfect sense. And it would have given you that more time to already have invested in established Batman story rather than having to dip in and out of that. And it would have and I think it would have allowed for a tighter story with BVS. And I think it just would have made a better all-around trajectory from Man of Steel to a Batman movie to Batman versus Superman, and then boom, Justice League. Just seems like that would have been a smart way to go. But
I agree.
You know, I'll never forget sitting in Hall H when they announced BVS and seeing that logo pop up on screen was like amazing. It's the one thing I miss the most out of, you know, this COVID shit that has us locked down at home is that crowd enthusiasm at something like Comic-Con just cannot be matched anywhere. When these big announcements happen there and you're in that room with all like a bunch of nerds and that sound is booming, this like the feeling of that is amazing. It's awesome.
I got legitimately bummed when we learned that Comic-Con was virtual again this year. I guess I just was holding on to it in the back of my mind that, you know, they'd be okay and figure out a way to have us back, because, you know, that week is a grind without question. But you're right that there's elements that happen during that week that can't be. You're right, they can't be matched anywhere else.
No.
So Snyder tells me for the book that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
He told me for the book that it was his dream to hold off and announce the Snyder Cut at Hall H. Like, he wanted in a perfect world last year. He ended up revealing the cut was going to come at the end of like a Man of Steel watch party that he did on Vero. but he wanted to keep it under wraps and walk out on stage in Hall H and just be able to drop the mic on that audience. And
that would have been cool.
Listening to him talk about, like he said, I just know they would have gone crazy, and he's right. He knows 100%.
People would have lost their minds, dude.
Oh God, it would have. That would have
been cool.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. What were you gonna say? Where are we at?
I don't remember. I'm too enthralled by what you just said. I mean, all I see is Zack Snyder on stage at Hall H dropping a mic, and then like having Zack Snyder's Justice League up on that big screen behind. Just, I think the audience would have rioted, like not in a bad way, but in like after a big football game win or something, like Super Bowl. Yeah. People would just like take to the streets and just like be tipping over cars. Be like, what are they doing this for? They're like, Zack Snyder announced the Justice League. Be like, what? Who? What? It's a nerd thing. You wouldn't understand.
Look at this action too. You know, you talk about seeing Superman in ways that we've never seen him before in these films. Like, it's just the action choreography is unlike
this is amazing.
Anything.
And it all just looks so great still today. Again, there's a lot of movies you can watch, look back on, and be like, ugh, the effects just really don't hold up. It just doesn't look very good.
Right.
You know, Man of Steel holds up. It's got everything going on.
Let's also now talk about, I think it's a genius idea to start BVS from Batman's point of view during this.
Oh, yeah.
During the attack on Metropolis. Just genius.
So cool. You know? And then like seeing, from Bruce Wayne's perspective, him looking up and seeing, Superman and Zod fighting, and just that look on his face of like pure anger, and you get it, you feel like this world that they set up feels real. And here you have, a guy that's been a millionaire vigilante is looking at this, his world kind of crumbled now with metahumans. And he's like, this is it. Like, this is my greatest threat that I've ever had.
Zack Snyder is throwing fighter jets around like they are, Matchbox cars. And it looks amazing.
Again, like, you make the Michael Bay comparison, right? So you've seen Transformers Dark of the Moon, right? Where they're like destroying Chicago.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to this, but you don't you have Hans Zimmer's score that is really letting you know that this is dire. It's not exciting. He's like, this is dire. Like, people are dying. Like, buildings are collapsing and falling.
Yes.
You're feeling it. And I think that's why people equated this. Like, oh, it's like destruction porn, because they genuinely felt like, oh, this is horrible. Whereas you watch like the Michael Bay movies, you're like, oh, that was awesome. Oh, look at that explosion. Oh, look at that happening. Blah, blah. It's so cool. Again, not attacking Michael Bay because I love Michael Bay. I'm just noting the difference between those two very distinct styles that also kind of coalesce in a similar style, which is like this big, visually like refined action set pieces. Both of them do it extremely well. And I am one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to Army of the Dead from Zack is I'm looking forward to seeing like just some straight action. I love I love what he did in Sucker Punch, although admittedly Sucker Punch is my least favorite movie of his, mostly due to the third act. But I love his action sensibility and style, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of the stuff from Army of the Dead, a lot of stuff which I'm so glad they haven't ruined, and I know you know what I'm talking about. There's so much they could ruin. I remember when they debuted that trailer, I was like, God, I hope they don't show anything like what we saw like on storyboards and art and stuff like that. I was like, I don't want to see that yet. Like, that's like amazing shit. Right. People really have you have no idea what you're in for Army of the Dead. There's so much more than what you think it's going to be.
And it's right behind us, isn't it? Isn't it May?
Yeah. Look, my eyes are getting big. I'm excited. We get 2 Zack Snyder movies within the span of 2 months, and one of them is 4 hours long. We're eating good, folks. We're eating good. All you nerds out there, you're eating good.
Is this Weta or ILM? I don't know who did the work on this.
I'm not sure. That's a great question. I feel bad that I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. I don't either.
We're coming up on a great scene here where Snyder does an homage to Christopher Reeve, where they actually superimpose Reeve's face over Henry Cavill's for a brief second when he's underneath the world engine and he's getting ready to fly up into it. And I just love that. I love that little touch. It's great. And here you have David Kelly.
This is a scene that you wouldn't get in a Bay. And again, I hate to keep shitting on Bay. We're not doing that on purpose. But you wouldn't get this in a Bay scene where you go to street level with truly human characters who are, struggling with the physicality of, holy shit, all this damage came down on us. And right now we can't move this to free this poor woman.
Yeah.
It takes a minute. You got to pause.
You're just going to die.
I want to see the.
Here's the scene. I love the scene so much. It's a revelatory scene for Kal-El as well, because it's a moment where he's harnessing his power. He's really seeing how strong he actually is.
Oh, I think one of my favorite scenes is similar to this one. It's in BVS after the nuke detonates, and he's like corpse Superman up in space.
Oh, yeah.
But then he reaches out and recharges from the sun.
It's a great scene.
It's such a great Superman scene.
And he opens his eyes and he's got the red glow. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, so great. Awesome shot. Oh, you get to live today.
I can't understand anyone who criticizes that Zack doesn't understand the character. I don't get it. I don't get that at all.
I just think that I really do think that it comes down to a different in personality and life experience. I think that you cull from a lot of different things. I talk about this, frequently when I'm talking about movies, is how, they represent different aspects of our personalities from different times in our lives. And I think, sometimes people, they're made different, they've experienced life differently, that they can't resolve that. And I also think that that's kind of the greatness of humanity. I'm not high on drugs either, but people are different. And I think that we tend to ignore that aspect, and instead drawing a line rather than accepting there is some differences here. I see this differently. You see this differently. But I think that understanding Man of Steel and really grasping it comes down to where you're coming from in this world at whatever point you are in your life. I've watched movies throughout my life at different periods, and each time I watch them, especially after a certain amount of time, it very frequently is a new experience. And I think a lot of people that did not like Man of Steel early on will love it later. And I also think that the reverse could be true too. People that loved it could look back and be like, you know what, actually, now that I've had kids and whatever, and I survived COVID or something else substantial in my life, I don't like Man of Steel. I think more people will like it than won't, but that's the other thing, is we tend to get to a point where we don't allow ourselves to change our minds, especially in today's society where, everything is so definitive and on this ever-changing moral compass. And it's like, listen, you can change your mind. It's okay. It's allowed.
Dude, and it speaks volumes that we're able to talk about stuff like this in a Superman movie. That there are so many underlying themes happening in this film that we're on these topics and it's not out of place.
Yeah,
we have not wandered away from the film. We're truly inspired by the film.
Absolutely.
And having these conversations because of it.
Absolutely. I mean, we're dealing with an alien that's here that's saving people. Some people that want him dead. Some people that don't care about him. People that are afraid of him, and he's out here, trying to save their lives.
And when he says Krypton had its chance, when he's made a decision that he's going to fight for, I think it's. I was watching during the Man of Steel watch party when Zack was watching it, and there was people who had a chat going, and they were like, Bruce Wayne has entered the chat. This is the moment in BVS. when he arrived.
I get that.
That made me laugh.
That's funny. Yeah, I think one of the bigger themes of Man of Steel, if not the biggest theme, is all about choices. Everything comes down to choices.
Sure.
You're watching Kal-El and you're watching his father early on making choices. His father chooses to send him to Earth. Jonathan Kent chooses to raise him to not embrace his powers. And then Kal-El eventually chooses to use his powers. And here he's about to make another huge choice, which is basically to let the Krypton race die. He could have chosen another way. He could have said, you know what? You make a good point. I'm going to help you, Zod, because I guess I'm a Kryptonian and you're right. We should be ruling these people and let's start the race again. Right. But instead he says very simply, Krypton had its chance. You know, they had their time and now it's somebody else's time. You know, he's not going to choose to destroy another population in order to keep his alive. So here he's about to fly into the Phantom Zone. I think a lot of people think it's just like it blows up, but he's just going into the Phantom Zone.
Yep.
And I think him and Feora are alive in the Phantom Zone. They probably got a bunch of babies.
I think you're right.
I just think it'd be very easy to bring them back.
Sure. Oh, there they all go.
She seems pretty calm for falling straight to the ground. Oh, now she's screaming. All right, now she's realized it.
Yeah. What's amazing about this movie,
great shot. I love this shot right here,
is that in any other superhero origin story, your climactic fight might have been the Kansas fight. Probably most definitely would have been everything that we've watched up to this point. And the minute that they suck this thing up, you'd be like, all right, now we're going to reach our conclusion.
Exactly.
Let's start drawing out. But, oh, wait, hold on a second. We got 25 more minutes left to go. And Superman and Zod are going to beat the hell out of each other. Like, this is your conclusion in any other film. He saved us. It's over.
It's done. Well, and if it were a Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner, Richard Lester movie, this would have been it. But nope.
But we hired Michael Shannon, and goddamn, we're going to use
Michael Shannon. We sent him to Jim Jones for 3 months, and we're going to show why.
I have no people.
And listen, this is a powerful moment coming up here. That's not just some like bullshit supervillain narrative. Zod has a genuine reason to be pissed.
Yes.
And look at, this is where I think people look at this and they look at this destruction and they're like, look at all this, how
it's jarring,
lost and everything. And I admit, it is like, it's like they've created a desert in the middle of a city. But again, this kind of stuff happens weekly in the comics. So what you're getting upset about ultimately is the medium itself. And that's just kind of what it is. And I think it's a testament to what Snyder and Goyer were able to pull off story-wise. That was their goal, was to make the story feel real. And they did that. I think they achieved it. And I think, people's aversion to this aspect shows that they did it. Yeah, this speech, you could reverse it. You could just totally put that into anything.
Well, and what trained soldier doesn't feel that, right? Like he's a product of his training.
Yeah.
You said it earlier at the beginning of the movie. Like, you could make the argument that Zod is not wrong.
You could even make the argument that Zod technically is a good guy for Krypton. Like, we saw that he rebelled against the rulers on Krypton. But the rulers of Krypton, they weren't really paying attention to what they had done in terms of their planet being destroyed, right? Like, they were kind of arrogant in itself. So paint Zod, is Zod he's not, he needs to work on his bedside manner, but he's pretty angry, but is he wrong?
Zod is mad because they almost did a sort of colonial expansionism, right? Like, he's pissed that Krypton didn't focus on Krypton and just tried to spread itself out too thin.
And now he sees, an opportunity. All he's got to do is pull that codex out of Kal-El and restart the Krypton race there on Earth. They could be a race of gods, at least amongst people. And I think that was his ultimate goal. I love this. Is like these punches being thrown coming up here, just great. It's like what I dreamed about. That LexCorp logo right there.
Calling it disaster porn it's not wrong. It's not wrong, man. A lot of shit gets destroyed in this movie. As it should, as it should. It's very realistic.
Yeah.
But when you see buildings cut in half and Zack makes it feel like a legitimate building being cut in half, it's hard not to wince.
Yeah, no, it really is. Like, and you see them, going through like all of this stuff and then, just bouncing back and keep going. It is a battle of gods among men. And I think Zack just really embraced that. I also like the, how the discovery of his powers, of Zod discovering what he's capable of here on Earth throughout this battle is
right.
Like this part here where he like really embraces it. So cool.
Did you watch Bloodshot with Vin Diesel?
I haven't watched Bloodshot. That's like one of the few that I haven't checked out. I read the comics for years, though.
The reason why I bring it up is because it ends in a fight that's not too dissimilar to this, where it's Bloodshot taking on two other soldiers that are basically high-powered and supposed to be his equals. And it legitimately looks like three cartoon characters fighting each other. Like the visual effects are so poor when I watch this, and being an older film, I cannot believe how accurate it, even just in quick scenes that they could have cheated and put a little bit, wonky visuals, and you'd sort of write it off as like, all right, that's kind of like, this looks so realistic.
Yeah.
And
those punches just there, like those are just moments that just make it for me, that I'm just like, it's like the Superman movie I just always dreamed about as a kid.
Yeah. And never thought you'd get a chance to see it.
And I don't watch any of the CW shows. I don't have anything against them. But I watched Smallville when it was out, and I loved Smallville, but I just like the new shows just don't really resonate with me. I find that they ask a lot of you as an audience. Like they're like, oh, hey, we have 24 episodes per season. And I feel like that model is just dead. I'm just like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for 24 episodes. And there's so much like wasted time in those. There's a Wayne Enterprises logo right there on that satellite. Okay, for those that never caught it.
Yep.
But I find that the CW shows, they just waste a lot of time, and I just don't get into them. And I haven't really seen like what, like the new Superman and Lois. I don't watch what is it, Legends of Tomorrow. Or any of those.
I did the Flash. I did the Flash first couple of seasons, and I liked it. But then, like any show, you hit a point where
you're just
it
like,
runs
where
its
is it
course,
going?
Yeah,
just too much. It's too much. So here comes the most controversial scene of Man of Steel. But again, we're looking at choices. And Zack's intent was always for this to be the birth of Superman's no-kill policy, because he was forced to do it at this point in his early journey. This is literally his first big battle as Superman on Earth. And just like the moment when he was, he could have saved his father, his Earth father, he chose not to. And he has a choice now. He can watch them die or break his goddamn neck. And he made a choice.
Zod says never.
And he's not happy about it. This is, it's something that like will torment him for the rest of his days. I remember reading, I can't remember which writers, one of the Superman writers who saw that moment at the theater and like stood up and he's like, that's it, I'm out of here. And was like leaving the theater, making a big scene over it. And And it's like what we talked about earlier. Like these characters don't belong to them.
Right.
These
right,
characters,
right.
first off, they belong to the creators, Shuster and Siegel for one. But ultimately, they belong to the people. They belong to us. Like you
Sure.
pick and choose which versions you like of these characters better. So I don't know. I always hear that story about the comic writer, and I can't remember which one it was, but I was just so annoyed with that story where they're like storming out of the theater after they see Superman snap Zod's neck. I'm just like, dude, come on, get over yourself. You don't own that character.
There are certain characters, I guess, that I would feel beholden to, that if they made a drastic, I don't think that's as drastic of a decision as some people make it out to be. I think in the consequence that it has structured Superman into, that you understand why he made the decision. If you take emotion out of it, you can understand why he made the decision. Hindsight helps a whole lot.
Yeah.
When we were coming into this movie, we hadn't seen the number of interpretations of different characters. Like this was still at the onset when we had just seen Christopher Nolan do with Batman what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we hadn't seen yet a steady stream of multiple interpretations of characters that we love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true.
It speaks to just this movie being ahead of its time. On so many levels, and for what it did for the comic book industry as a whole, it's just ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And people are realizing it now. People are embracing it now for what it is.
I wholeheartedly agree. And here you have Captain Ferris, who ties into a Green Lantern character, and I forget her name. She's like the purple-colored lantern in the comic. I can't remember her name to save my life at the moment, but little subtle or not so subtle nod. She shows up in BVS as well, but never does.
I think we're getting a lantern in green. I think we're getting a lantern in Snyder Cut. Do you think we're going to get to see a lantern?
If we do, I think it will be John Stewart. I don't think it'll be Al Jordan, but we'll see.
Okay,
we'll see. I think
soon?
If anything, I'm looking forward to some surprises. That's what I want. I want surprises. And I think Zack knows that. Zack knows what he's doing. He knows what people are expecting, and he's got 4 hours to do it. So I feel like he can drop.
How great would it have been if he managed to keep the Leto Joker under his hat?
Oh, could you imagine seeing that? Everybody would be like, what? But man, there's some things you just can't keep. I love this little ending shot here.
Yeah, this is beautiful. You're right, too, in that some of this stuff has to be used to market the movie to people who aren't aware.
Yeah.
Some of those breadcrumbs are going to have people saying, like, wait a second, what the hell? There's another Batman Joker stuff coming, and explore it for that reason. So
I genuinely appreciate that scene. Or I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but the fact that that Snyder has fought for that to show up, because, I think he knew, it's like, hey, we may never see the Affleck and Leto Joker interact in any other movie. I've always said, like, my dream Zack Snyder DCEU project after Justice League would not be another Justice League. I would save that for later down the road. I want to see a Death in the Family Batman movie directed by Snyder. Who else are you going to hire?
That'd be amazing.
Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see that story. That is what I want to see. I would love.
I think he wants to tell it too.
I do too, and I think that's why he was like, "Man, I got to get these guys together somehow."
Yeah. Good Lord, how did we just do 2 hours and 15 minutes?
It's crazy.
This is like a 30-minute movie.
I feel like we blinked and it was over. Welcome to the planet. I think it's a great line. It's a great way to end it. The imagery with him as a kid, and then that, welcome to the planet. I think that's kind of, in a way, it's Snyder kind of recognizing your average audience with those kinds of lines, which isn't to say, oh, the nerds are so more sophisticated. But those are things that anybody can get. Not everything has to be an inside,
Yeah.
reference. So, anyways, produced by Deb Snyder, who is amazing. My first time meeting her was on the Army of the Dead set, and I just have so much respect for her and for Zack, for everything that they've been through in terms of the Justice League situation. But more than anything, they just they've made great movies together. And
Absolutely.
I just appreciate that so much. I mean, I'm a movie fan. Obviously, I love movies. I think that they are probably the most evolved form of art. And I feel like there's just so much to glean from them. And Man of Steel, in terms of a Superman movie, I think is just the best representation of that character. And I will never shoot somebody down if they say, well, I like the Reeve movies better. I'm not going to argue with anybody. That's your take. And everybody has the right to like what they like. And you should. But for me, Man of Steel, I think, speaks on a greater level of not just the characters, but also the action, which we've talked about a lot in this.
Right.
The style, the characters, the music. It's just something where everything really comes together. And I love it more and more each time I watch it. And I love that you could get into deep conversations about Man of Steel. I think if we were watching like Doctor Strange, which isn't to knock on Doctor Strange, it's a fine movie, but I don't think we'd have this deep level of discussion watching something like Doctor Strange versus Man of Steel. I think that speaks volumes for it.
No, I really agree, and I also feel that because of what's happened with Zack and because his time in the universe has been truncated, that I almost value these films more because we have them, and we didn't get to see his complete vision, and it gives you the ability to go back and revisit and understand that this is a guy who understood the characters and who was willing to take big risks with them and not conform to, I'm going to give you what you've seen already before, and a chewed up and spit out narrative. I'm going to make big swings with the decisions I'm going to try to make, and I want you to come along with me. And for me personally, it took me a little while to catch up to where he was with it. And by the time I got to BVS Ultimate Edition, I was fully on board, which is what makes me anticipate and hunger for the 4-hour Justice League more than anything else, because like you said, it's a continuity to what we've seen in the two films that are purely his.
And that's always been, and I've said this many times before, that whether it's great or it's a mess, I still want to see what Snyder intended. That's always been the absolute base level of my support for the Snyder Cut, is that, listen, I'm somebody that is I'm very anti-censorship. I'm very, pro artists, pro freedom of expression. Like I will absolutely die on that hill. I'm an artist and a writer myself. I don't want anybody telling me what I can and can't do. I don't want to hear it, and I feel like anytime that you're trying to restrict somebody from telling their full vision, I'm always going to side with the artist. And I also, but I'm not an idiot. I understand how the film industry works. You and I both know this. There's a lot of money, a lot of talent, a lot of moving pieces involved, and you don't always get to have that.
A lot
kind
of egos
freedom.
too. A lot of egos.
A lot of egos.
Yeah.
And to say, I hear people say it all the time, right? Like on Twitter, like they should just let so and so make whatever they want. I'm like, well, they're giving them $150 million. They're probably going to have some say so. You have to expect that, right? Like, even
of
movies
course.
on like a shoestring indie budget, they still have people that are giving money and they're saying, well, what are you making? Can you do this? Can you do that? There's always compromises. Sure. And I think it just takes a filmmaker that can deal with those compromises and easily fold them into their film. That's how they're going to get to make the movie that they want to make. Unless you can independently finance yourself, if you're George Lucas and you decide one day to make a prequel trilogy and just do whatever the hell you want, listen, that's great. But I think we could argue day and night about the pros and cons of that as well. So
sure.
It's something that I also discussed with my co-host on Beard and the Bald, Chris Bumbray. Like a lot of these Netflix movies, right, that get greenlit, and they pretty much, Netflix is like, hey, here's some money, go make a movie.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, they probably needed a little studio involvement in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't think it's such a great thing that they let them do whatever the hell they wanted. It didn't really. There's some areas that need to be cutted and trimmed and fixed up, and they should have done this or that. So, it's a delicate balance to give somebody, carte blanche to do whatever they want.
Of course.
So you got to be careful.
Wait till we get to Avatar 2, 3, and 4. That might be the perfect example of someone might have needed a producer. All due respect to John Landau, who I'm sure is, collaborating with Cameron. But
Cameron's but Landau's a great guy.
Many a year now.
Landau is such a great guy, but I you got to wonder how much is he like reeling in James Cameron we're talking about here. I can see John Landau reeling in Robert Rodriguez, but I don't really see him reeling in James Cameron per se. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what we get when that happens. Anyways, we're coming to the close of this right here. I once again want to give my heartfelt thanks to Sean O'Connell for joining us. Sean is just a great guy. You could check out his book, Release the Snyder Cut. It's at bookstores now. Just Google Release the Snyder Cut book. Check it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can find it all over the place. And then, Sean, do you have any other plugs, any other places? Where can people find you on a daily basis?
Oh, Cinema Blend. I'm the managing director of Cinema Blend, and we do all of our nonsense over there. But more than anything, this was a ton of fun. I knew I needed to catch up with Man of Steel before seeing Justice League, and I could think of no better person to sit down and watch this with. I miss my friend Paul. Paul's a really great dude, and you're missed on the circuit. And you'll be missed even more so when we're at set visits and the world is back to normal. But I'm glad that we're able to connect this way and do some fun stuff still too, and geek out over tremendous films like this, because I know that you appreciate them as much as I do.
Absolutely. I'm still going to be around. I'll still always remain a voice in film, just because I love film. What's funny is, I was writing about movies before there was an internet. I had my little movie books that I used to keep in the early 90s, and I was cutting pictures out of Entertainment Weekly and pasting them, like basically making web pages for my movies and doing grades just like Entertainment Weekly and all this other shit. So, I've been involved in this for as long as I can remember, and I'm not going anywhere. But I'll always remain a voice, but just won't be for a particular site. But it gives me some freedom, and it gives me freedom to say, you know what, I'm going to see if Sean wants to do a commentary. I don't think I could have done that with Joe Blow. I think they would have been like, why are we bringing in somebody from somewhere else? Like, well, because he's awesome and he's great. It's a great voice. So, it gives me freedom to bring cool people in, and I'm going to continue to do that. And Sean, I hope we can have you back for another rewatch. Who knows, maybe BVS or even Justice League for that matter. That would be amazing to do Zack's Justice League.
All 4 hours.
Woo, 4 hours. Woo! That would be a marathon.
Paul, this anyways, was a blast, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Sean. And guys, go out, check out his book. Hope you enjoyed Man of Steel. Check out BVS next, and check out Zack Snyder's Justice League on March 18th on HBO Max. I'll be there, and I'm sure you will too. In the meantime, you guys can check out Arctic Ninja Paul here on the YouTube network. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit your notifications so you can get notifications. I do live streams each week as well, so check in for those. And follow me on Twitter, Arctic Ninja Paul. And that's it. Then the rest of the time you need to leave me alone because I have the life to live. Thanks a lot, you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.